Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Cindy walked through the garden in frustration. She didn't like the way the trees had weathered the last frost that had suddenly hit Waterloo a few days ago. The apple trees had bloomed profusely this year and had promised to produce a bumper crop if it hadn't been for the sudden drop in temperature. Jack. She finally saw her head orchardist. Something must be done. The trees are under severe stress. The orchard mistress spoke excitedly. Cindy, only immunostimulants can help here now, the older man replied. Let's in 3 stages daily give anti-stress hormones, otherwise we will lose most of the crop. Jack was a very experienced horticulturist and agronomist in one person. He had come to work in the gardens when Cindy's step-grandfather, her stepmother's father, was still alive. He was then a young lad who had just graduated from an agricultural institute in eastern Poland. But Kevin had immediately discerned in him a future genius in planned gardening. Cindy's step-grandfather was very fond of Jack and was always encouraging the lad to experiment and discover new things, and all this did not go in vain. Jack had several patents in the field of apple growing, and more than once their orchard was at the top of the list for exporting apples overseas. The quality of their fruit was always excellent. Jack tried to develop new environmentally friendly means for growing apple trees. All their products were certified and sent to the best markets in Europe. Cindy, I want to try mixing phytohormones with that elixir we patented last year, the specialist thought. I've already tested in practice. They can work together. I like the result. I trust you completely, hugged his mistress. You are my father and grandfather in one person. I've been carrying you in my arms since you were 2 years old. Jack smiled. As I remember in the beginning, your father took you with him to work in the garden. While he was working, I carried you all over the garden. There's still a tree where I made you a swing. Cindy, I'm worried about you. We'll get the garden back to normal, but you're puffy-eyed again. Did Benjamin call again? You know, that leech thinks he can't get away from me. The woman sighed. But I've decided I'm suing him. It's about time. Jack patted her on the head. Let him know his place. He hasn't invested a dime in this place. For over 8 months now, there had been a bitter war between Cindy and her ex-husband. Benjamin had always been cunning. Neither Cindy's grandfather nor her father wanted him in the family, but the boy had used all his charm to get the not-so-pretty girl to like him. He did not give her a pass. Cindy, all the time spent in the garden with her father and stepmother, and time for guys, she did not have much time. Therefore, when the girl turned 25, she suffered from the lack of attention from guys. Benjamin appeared in her life, seemingly by accident. The young man got a job at the time of harvest. Just a few days later, he began to show interest in the stepdaughter of the mistress of the garden. At first, Cindy was in shock and did not know how to react to all this, but the guy showed such persistence that he just followed her around. Harry, Hannah said excitedly to her husband, I don't like this guy following Cindy around. You know that I love your daughter as if she were my own, but I can see that Benjamin is unreliable. I can feel in my heart that he doesn't want to be with her for love, but for our gardens. But Cindy had made her choice, and her stepmother and father would not stop her. The wedding was very big. Even distant relatives from Germany came. The first years of their life together, Benjamin pretended to be interested in gardens. He was trying to understand how the whole business worked and was always at work. Oh, that Benjamin was a pain in the ass. Complain to Hannah, Jack. He pokes his nose into everything, and when you start explaining, he won't listen. He wants the trees to grow at his whim, and he's no use to you. The man concluded. Cindy, on the other hand, was so glad that her husband was interested in gardening. She dreamed that someday they would buy their own plot of land and have a garden of their own. Her father and Hannah promised to help her with this, but her hopes were quickly dashed. One day Benjamin was away for a long time. The clock showed 3:30, and Cindy waited for her husband in the kitchen. She and Benjamin lived apart. Her father and stepmother had given them a house in a neighboring village for their wedding. The phone kept answering that the caller was unavailable. Suddenly the door creaked open and Cindy woke up. The girl herself did not notice how she put her head on her hands at the table and fell asleep. "Benjamin, where have you been?" the wife said excitedly. "Did something happen to you?" The boy felt very well. He was having fun. Cindy approached him and noticed a lipstick on his neck. "Benjamin, what does that mean?" she shouted angrily. "Are you having a mistress?" "Answer me," demanded the wife. "Why are you so boiling?" The husband said in a slurred tongue, "I just sat with friends today in the bar. I'm not a dog to be tied up at home." Cindy didn't tell her parents anything about it, but it began to happen more and more often. One day the girl couldn't stand it and told her husband that she would tell her father about everything. "Don't you dare!" He hit her in the face. "Then you'll see what I'll do to you." It wasn't that Cindy was afraid of him. She was more ashamed of her stepmother and father, who had warned her that Benjamin was an unreliable fellow. One day the girl couldn't take it anymore and told Hannah all about it. "Hannah, I can't take it anymore." Cindy burst into tears. "He has someone else. He's often out at night. Sometimes he even hits me." "Cindy, why didn't you say anything about all this?" Her stepmother asked her sternly. "I'll talk to him. We won't tell father anything yet. I'll find ways to deal with him. You need to file for divorce." A few days later, Hannah was in town. She went to the clothing market and walked into the mall. The woman was looking at a beautiful dress she wanted to buy, but suddenly she saw Benjamin on the other side of the store, accompanying some girl, whispering sweetly in her ear. "Benjamin, come here," Hannah said coldly to the guy as she approached him. "Next week, Cindy's filing for divorce. That's it, your game is over. Don't even think about blackmailing her." "We'll see about that," he shouted after her. "Screw you." Hannah spent the whole evening thinking about how to tell Harry, her husband. Finally, she decided to have a serious talk with him tomorrow afternoon. In the morning, they had to go to a company to see the partners. It was April. Rain was lightly dripping, and Hannah and her husband got into the car. They wanted to get things done before lunch and then drive to the garden. On this day, Hannah was driving. It was obvious that the woman was very worried. "Hannah, what's wrong?" Her husband asked her thoughtfully. "Are you not feeling well?" "No, I'm fine," she sighed. "Could we stay home for a couple hours this afternoon? I'm a little tired." Hannah drove quietly along the highway, and everything was going well until they came to a section that went over a hill. The woman accelerated up the hill so that she could drive up it without any problems, but when the car reached the highest point, it started to roll downhill at full speed. "Oh, shit!" screamed Hannah. "Something's happened to the brakes. Harry, I can't control the steering." Those were her last words. The car rolled down the hill and accelerated very fast. It smashed through the fence and into the ravine. For 300 meters, the car spun around, going up in the air and hitting the ground. By the time it reached the river at the bottom of the hill, the car was practically ashes. "Cindy, but you have me." Benjamin reassured his wife. "Don't worry, I'll never leave you. We'll get through this tragedy together." Cindy was 28 at the time, and she was all alone. Apart from Benjamin, she really had no one, and Uncle Jack supported her as best he could. The girl had to come to her senses very quickly. A new season was beginning. The garden could not be started. She had inherited all the gardens of her stepmother, who, a few years ago, had written a will on the subject. Despite the fact that the girl had worked with her parents in the garden for many years to act on her own, in the beginning it was very difficult for her. According to the remains we found, your stepmother failed to drive. A police officer told Cindy at the time. It's very hard to say what caused it. The car just crumpled into small particles like sand. But even so, we will still investigate. For the first year after the tragedy, Benjamin settled down. He slept at home all the time, managed the garden, and tried to help Cindy in any way he could. Cindy, I don't like this. Uncle Jack warned her one day. I can smell something in that bastard's mind. Jack, I don't know, she sighed. Benjamin has changed a lot lately. He's been supporting me in everything, and he's been doing a lot of gardening. The man only shook his head. He loved the girl and wished her only happiness, but then he had no evidence against her husband. Benjamin endured exactly 1 year, and then everything started again, but this time he became bolder and began to behave even more freely. There was no one else to protect Cindy from him. First he insulted her drunkenly, then he raised his hand, but one very important incident put an end to their relationship. Cindy urgently needed to go to the city on business. There she had an appointment. She was late and rushed on all sails, in the cafe waiting for her representative. The meeting went very well. A baby food company wanted to buy a good amount of apples this year. The girl said goodbye to the man and decided to sit in the cafe for a while longer. Suddenly her gaze fell on the window. Benjamin was walking along the street with a pregnant girl. From the way he held her hand, they were more than acquaintances. Benjamin? Cindy said to her husband in the evening, I'm giving you exactly 24 hours to get out of my house. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Cindy, what are you doing? He was surprised. What did I do? I love you so much. I think you're not the only one. She looked coldly at her husband. That pregnant girl, apparently, you love more than me. Which one? Benjamin played the wife. Cindy, what are you imagining? But it didn't help, and the guy became furious. He grabbed something from the table and ran up to his wife. Cindy didn't move. Listen, Benjamin, either you leave this house with your feet, or I'll report you to the police, and you'll go to jail, she said coldly. You are. The guy yelled at the top of his voice, but he could not beat his wife that day. Benjamin shouted for a long time, then grabbed his things and ran out of the house. From that day on, he never came to Cindy's house again. They only met in court, and Benjamin constantly terrorized her on the phone. The woman and the head gardener strolled along the apple alleys. They were looking at which varieties had reacted most to the cold temperatures. That's what I thought. Gloucester was the hardest hit. Considered the jack plant. We'll need to up the dosage for those. All right, let's start at lunchtime then, said the landlady. The forecast is for a couple more hours of drizzle before lunch and then sunshine. Cindy, we'll need to do a second treatment during the evening dew point. The man looked at her. That's when the auricles in the leaves open up and the phytohormones are absorbed in greater quantities. Do you have enough of everything, or do you need to buy something else? The woman asked thoughtfully. Do you have all the biologics? Yes, I checked everything. The head gardener replied. Cindy, order some Japanese medicine or something based on cedar and pine. They will help us a lot right now, too. It took almost 3 days for the trees to come around again. Some did lose color, but many recovered from the shock. I don't think that's a problem. Jack cheered up the landlady. "They'll have big apples this year, so you'll be able to sell them for more money." Cindy would come home happy. Of course, at the age of 30, it was very difficult for a young woman to take charge of an orchard of this size, but many years of experience in the orchard had not passed without a trace. Cindy was no longer so hurt by the way her husband had treated her. She saw very clearly now that Benjamin had never loved her, and in all likelihood, it was his plan to marry Cindy and then take everything away from her. The woman was completely immersed in her work. She didn't want to think about her personal life now. But still in the evenings there was such a longing that the loneliness brought tears to her eyes. Cindy ate dinner and tangled herself in her plaid, drinking hot tea with pleasure. She didn't want to think about anything, but the silence was suddenly interrupted by the phone. "Cindy, darling," someone spoke into the receiver. "Why won't you talk to me?" "Benjamin, don't even think about this nonsense." The woman replied coldly. "You'll wait till I report you to the police." "You can't do this to me." The man wouldn't stop. "You left me with nothing." "And what did you expect?" She laughed. "You can complain to the International Court. You won't get a dime from me." Last September, Cindy was finally able to divorce Benjamin. The court ruling left him with nothing. This, of course, did not suit him, and the man has been on her nerves for more than 6 months. Benjamin tried a variety of methods. Then he kept confessing love to Cindy, then threatened her, but the woman to all this remained indifferent. "Okay, you don't want to do it the easy way." He yelled into the phone. "So I'll meet you in court. This time I will succeed. Half of your business belongs to me." "Why not all of it?" The woman laughed. "Benjamin, if the law was on your side, you'd have gotten your share by now, but alas, you came into my house in your tattered underpants and you left in them. That's it, I'm not talking to you anymore." "Yeah, fuck you." The ex-husband scolded, but Cindy had already hung up, so Benjamin talked to himself for about 5 minutes. "I'm so sick of you." Cindy scolded aloud. "You never amounted to anything, but you always wanted to be king. Who will listen to you in court?" "You idiot. It's a good thing you're out of my life." The woman had already let Benjamin out of her life, so much that she even began to feel disgusted with him. She felt sorry for the lost time and effort, but as they say, we have to go through something in life, so she just accepted it. A couple more months went by, and the owner and her head gardener were convinced that their labors had not been wasted. "Cindy, look at these." Jack happily pointed to a load of beautiful apples. "They'll be perfect for July." "How grateful I am to you." The woman hugged him. "What would I do without you?" "Thank you for being here." "What's wrong, daughter?" He stroked her head. "I didn't do it alone. We all did it together. You know, Cindy, I've worked for you for so many years, but not your step-grandfather, not your stepmother, not your father, never hurt a single person. Matthew made that rule. No yelling at the workers. Everything was always resolved through polite conversation. I've never had a master like you, and your father, Harry, after he married Hannah, never raised his voice to anyone. He continued to work as a laborer for a long time." The man wept. Cindy hugged him even tighter. In essence, she had no one else in her family except Jack. Time passed quickly, and it was harvest time. The head gardener was very pleased with the result this year. Despite the April frost, the trees came to life very quickly and produced not only tasty, but also large fruits. Look at that! Jack couldn't get enough of them. They are all from 90 millimeters in diameter and more, in those boxes in general 12, 15 centimeters, and such beautiful fruits. Yes, especially those with a pink side, just beautiful. Rejoice together with the agronomist hostess. This year we actually have a very good harvest. It had been a busy time. The season had not given us a chance to rest. Cindy disappeared in her orchards until late at night, while the apple loading was going on. This year, the pears had also yielded well. Not so many, but a contract had already been signed for them. In general, the orchard was bustling. One Sunday evening, Cindy arrived home a little early. Her fatigue was wearing her down. In the morning, Benjamin called again, bidding for her. The woman, tired, sat down on the sofa, tried to put her thoughts in order. Suddenly her phone rang. Some unfamiliar number popped up. "Is it Cindy?" Someone asked in Italian. "Yes," a woman answered. "What do you want?" She had a strong accent. "My name is Matthew. I'm a lawyer." The man replied, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I really need your help." "A lawyer?" Cindy asked him again, "But I'm listening." "Is there some problem with the shipments to Italy?" She was surprised. "Supply problems?" The lawyer didn't understand. "I'm calling you on a personal matter. You see, your father had an older sister, Lucy, in Italy. I don't know if you've been in touch all this time or not, but she died a few years ago, leaving 2 children. They hired me to handle the estate. I'm sorry, but what does that have to do with me?" Cindy was surprised. "I have no claim to any of their property. It's not about you." Matthew tried to explain the situation. "You see, your father has a house in Italy. As far as I know, your father died. I'm sorry for your loss. Now your cousin and sister would like to ask you, if you don't want to inherit it, could you give it to them?" "My father's old house?" Cindy asked. "Yes, of course. I don't want it, so they can have it." "Cindy, according to our laws, you will have to formally either inherit it yourself or renounce it." The man explained. "Otherwise, this house will just hang around like that. Could you come to Italy for a few days?" "Oh," the woman sighed. "I'm sorry, but now I cannot exactly. We have a season, and you can do it on the internet or through the mail?" "Unfortunately, no," replied the lawyer. "It will require your personal presence." "That would be a big problem for me." The woman said, "All right, give me some time, I'll think about it. I'll call you back on this number in a few days." Cindy was shocked by this news. First of all, her father had never told her that he had a sister. Secondly, the woman was not prepared for some sort of family connection in Italy. She considered herself a true American and didn't even want to, at least, look up anything about how her father had lived years ago. "Cindy, why don't we push this thing to the end of August?" Jack advised her. "It will be easier for me to handle it there, and you can go to Italy for a few days." "You know, I don't want to go there." She looked at him pleadingly. "I have enough problems with Benjamin here, and there will be relatives there who will probably want to keep in touch with me. But you don't have to tell them you have gardens, do you?" The man looked at her. "Let them think you're starving. Harry was a good man, and the fact that he didn't tell you about your aunt was no accident. He had a good reason. He didn't talk about his past life at all, as you know. Maybe Hannah knew something about it. She was very fond of him." "You're probably right," Cindy agreed. "He had a reason for not telling me anything about Italy. All I know is that my father loved me very much, and what happened to him back home is of no consequence to me." By the end of August, Cindy had made a visa for Italy. The woman decided to drive to Verona in her car. "Jack, I'll feel so safe there." She said to the gardener, "Not that I don't speak Italian well, but asking someone for directions all the time, with my strong accent, I won't be able to. You'd probably have to drive about 20 hours. The man figured it out. I can manage." Cindy smiled. "I'll spend the night in a hotel, and call me if you need anything. I'll be in touch all the time." The only thing is, I don't know how it will be in Italy, but I'd better solve this case at once, otherwise they will terrorize me with this house for years. So I'll give it up right away. The weather was good. It was Cindy's first such long journey. The woman realized that it would not be easy for her on the road, but she was especially afraid of what might happen to her in Italy, and in general, she had never been interested in this country. It seemed to her a completely unknown zone. Probably, except that Rome was the capital of Italy, Cindy knew nothing else. I'll manage somehow, she encouraged herself. I'm only going there for a few days, and I'm not going to stay there. As soon as the woman crossed the border, she immediately felt a huge difference. This must be the Italian roads, she said in shock. You have to be very careful not to hit all these potholes. Finally, Cindy saw a large sign. She read the name and got excited. Verona, she sighed. Here I am. I hope they don't stop me at every corner now that I have someone else's license plate. But as soon as Cindy entered the city, she was immediately stopped by the police. As usual, they were standing in the most unexpected places. What are they doing here? The woman said in shock. Can they stand here? But in Italy, anything was possible, as Cindy found out over the next few days. Why did you come to us? The police officer looked at the documents with interest. I have business here. Cindy answered, I was called here by your lawyer. We're dealing with an inheritance issue. She tried to explain. The man finished examining the documents, checked the visa, but Cindy still did not let go. Was there something else? She was surprised. I have no problem with the documents. The man in uniform stared at her. The woman understood nothing. Come on, leave her alone, whispered in his ear partner. Or she may have some connections. We'll create problems for ourselves. The police officer hesitated for a while, but then handed the documents to her. Welcome to Verona. May you succeed in all your endeavors. Cindy's lawyer told her to drive down Verona's main street. She needed to get to the main square, and he would be waiting for her there. The woman slowly followed the navigator towards her final destination. As soon as she parked, Matthew found her immediately. Hello, Cindy. He extended his hand to her. I'm Matthew Clark, the lawyer. Hello, Matthew. The woman greeted him. It's very nice to see you. They got into the lawyer's car and drove to the notary, where Cindy's relatives were supposed to be waiting for them. Where are they? The lawyer was nervous when he and Cindy had been waiting for half an hour. I'll call them now. The man quickly pulled out his phone. It was obvious he was very worried. Paul, where are you? He asked dryly. We are already waiting for you. How come you haven't left yet? Let's hurry up. It's in your best interest. The lawyer hung up the phone and wiped the sweat from his face. They waited for almost 2 hours when finally, near the notary, a cab stopped and a man and a woman got out of it. Cindy immediately realized that they were drunk. Shall we go? Paul, who looked to be about 40 years old, said in a cheerful voice. Because of you, we missed the appointed time. Now we have to wait again until the notary calls us. The lawyer said unhappily. That's fine. The man replied in a slurred voice. We'll talk to our sister then. He took Cindy by the arm and led her away, his breath so strong that the woman felt nauseous. Well, sister, said the cousin, it is not customary to offend our relatives. What do you want? Cindy was surprised. You're already getting a house as a present from me. Well, a house is a house, but we need some money. He looked at her sternly. We don't live rich abroad, so we should have a conscience. Cindy was shocked. She didn't even know what to say. She wanted to say everything to the drunkard's face, turn around and leave, when the door of the notary's office opened, and they were called. Cursing herself for having come here at all, the woman went to get a lawyer. By 1 o'clock tomorrow, everything will be ready. Finally, the notary said, and they left his office. Paul brazenly headed for his sister, but Matthew quickly shoved the woman into the car and shouted, "See you tomorrow." They drove off. What was that? Cindy said in shock, "He was demanding money from me. You'll have to forgive me." With guilt, the lawyer told her. "When I started this case, a man asked me for it. We met with him and your cousin a few times, and everything was going fine. But then they both went on a bender, and it was after I called you. I didn't really know what to do. Just realizing how our system works, you would have had a shake-up with the house from time to time anyway, since you paid for your father all the debts he had accumulated over time. There are no claims against you now. I hope tomorrow, when we finish all the business, I never see them again." The woman could not come to her senses. "No," he answered briefly, "and I hope never to meet them again. They turned out to be the truest of alkies. What business could there be with them?" Cindy sat in silence until they walked back to her car. The woman was so stunned by what had happened to her that she found it hard to believe it all. The next day, the lawyer and Cindy were waiting for the new owners of the house at the notary's office. The man and woman had not yet sobered up. They had probably been celebrating the case all night. Paul gave Cindy a displeased look. After about 20 minutes, all the documents were signed, and they all went outside together. The man headed decisively towards his cousin, but he was again blocked by the lawyer. "Well, Paul, how will you pay for the work?" he asked. The man was confused. He didn't think he would have to pay at all. "Why, do I owe you something?" He looked at Matthew defiantly. "Why would you?" "I did all the work from start to finish." The lawyer replied calmly, "You own the house, don't you?" "We are, which means I've done my job." "Fuck you." He cursed his Paul and, making the hand sign to his sister, quickly jumped into the car that was waiting for them. "Didn't they pay you for the work?" Cindy asked in horror. "Oh my God, how could that be?" "And we can do anything," Matthew said with annoyance in his voice. "You can't help people after that. I spent so much time and effort to help them. Well, God will judge them. Let's go." Cindy could not understand why these people could do that to a lawyer. "Matthew," she said when they got out of his car, "this is my case, too. May I thank you for your work?" She handed him a 500 euros piece of paper. "No, that's too much." The man objected. "And besides, you don't have to take responsibility for their actions. You know, thanks to you, I now know that there are good people in Italy." Cindy smiled. "Let this be for you from me." Matthew stood looking at Cindy with a puzzled look. He still had the money in his hands and didn't know what to say. "Cindy, thank you very much," shouted he. When the woman was already getting into her car, she waved to him kindly and turned the key. Cindy felt a great relief that all her business in Italy was now over. "Thank goodness for home," she said to herself. "I'll just stop by the hotel to pick up my things." Cindy tried to concentrate on the road, but she couldn't get what had happened to her out of her head. Her vacation in Italy had turned out to be so short, but so eventful, that the woman's head was boiling from it all. She was driving down the street where her hotel was located. A traffic light showed, and beyond it Cindy had to turn. The woman wanted to pass quickly, but the red light came on abruptly. She stood waiting for the light to turn green. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a man started knocking on her window, shouting something loudly and waving his arms. The light turned green and Cindy drove off. After about 10 meters, she turned towards the hotel, but suddenly the same man was still in front of her. He jumped out into the road and Cindy hit the brakes as hard as she could. "What the hell?" she cursed, taking off her seatbelt. "Are they all crazy around here?" She quickly ran outside. There was a man lying in front of the car. He was conscious. The man tried to get up, but his left leg was bruised. "Why did you do that?" Cindy said through her tears. "What do you want from me?" The man was wandering along the center aisle of the city cemetery. Today was the anniversary of his wife's death. In fact, his meeting with Lara had happened by chance. Like a bird that flew into my house unexpectedly, she also jumped out of it unexpectedly. He sighed. Jordan was the son of a very rich man. His grandfather was a member of the party, and after the scandal, he managed to snatch the whole steel plant. The latter had been inherited by his father, but Davis Jr. didn't want to continue his father's business. After his death, his son sold the mill and started making natural juices. So, this business went so well that in a few years, Jordan became one of the leading producers in Italy and CIS countries. As usually happens, the first marriage of such rich people rarely happens happy, and so it happened in the life of Davis. The first time he chose as his wife the first beauty of Verona, the model Monica Jones. Then the man was 32 years old and the girl 21. They lived from the very beginning very badly. Monica was not interested, neither Jordan nor family life. The girl preferred to spend her time in beauty salons and resorts abroad. Monica, her husband once told her, "You and I live like strangers. You have to think of your family somehow." "Jordan, what don't you like?" She was surprised. "I have my own blog, social media. I'm in front of people all the time. Do you think I'm going to give up everything and give birth to your children?" She was indignant. Her husband that time did not answer her anything, but decided to wait some more time, and after 2 years, the man could not stand it any longer and filed for divorce. "Monica, I suggest we part ways peacefully." Davis suggested it. "You will receive from me in the divorce some compensation for spending 4 years of your life on me, but do not count on more." The girl did not answer anything, but after the divorce, she arranged on her ex-husband a real bullying on social networks. Monica gladly gave interviews and told how unfairly treated her Davis. "So that I once again at least once contacted some model or daughter of rich people." Jordan was angry. It would never happen. Many years passed, and the man remained alone. He was completely immersed in his work, and Davis would probably have remained a bachelor for the rest of his life if it hadn't been for one incident. Once Jordan was in a hurry to a very important meeting. His driver warned him that they had to stop at a gas station. Davis got out of the car and was discussing something on the phone. A young woman came to their car and started filling the tank with gasoline. The driver went to pay for the gas when the owner was waiting outside. "Well, that's it." In a beautiful voice said the young woman, "You have a full tank." "Thank you." The man thanked her. "You have a responsible job. You have to be very careful." "Yes," said the stranger, "but I'm used to it. Night shifts are hard, but thank God I have a job like this." The smile so transformed the girl's face that it became incredibly beautiful. Jordan. Unexpectedly, Davis extended his hand to the girl. "Let's get acquainted, Lara." She shook his hand with a smile. "Nice to meet you too." Davis was busy with a lot of new contracts. Probably 2 weeks later, the man suddenly remembered the girl who worked at the gas station. It was Sunday, and he got into his car. "Lara will be working tomorrow." The gas station attendant answered him. "Today is her day off." "Why did I even come here?" Jordan berated himself. "I'm a well-known man in my town. I'm 42 years old, and I came to a gas station to look for Lara. But the next day, Despite his busy schedule, he asked his driver to take him to the gas station. "Lara, I came to see you yesterday," Davis told the girl, "but I was told that you have the day off. I'd like to invite you to a cafe. Would you mind?" "Me?" She sounded scared. "I'm sorry, but I can't." "I'm sorry, but I have a husband." Jordan felt extremely ashamed. He apologized to the girl and decided not to mention her again. It was probably a month later when he and his driver stopped at a gas station. Davis looked at Lara in shock. Her entire face was bruised. "Lara, what happened to you?" The man couldn't take it anymore. "Did someone beat you up?" "No, I accidentally fell." Lowering her eyes, the girl answered, "It will soon pass." Jordan didn't know what to do. He headed towards the cash register. "Tell me, what about your employee?" he said calmly. "She said she fell, but it didn't look like it." "Yes, her husband is a complete idiot," angrily replied the older woman. "She falls so often, and how does she even live with him?" "Why doesn't Lara report him to the police?" The stranger persisted. "He'll kill her someday." "Who would want her?" The cashier sighed. "She has no relatives. Her mother is a drunk, and her daughter gave her daughter to this man for a bottle." "How's that?" Davis asked in shock. "And where did the guardianship authorities look? Who would look after them all?" The woman was indignant. "Do they think about the children?" Lara was not 18 years old when her mother was hungover and had no money for a bottle, so she gave the girl to a man for a drink. Jordan turned pale at the woman's words. His heart was pounding frantically. He turned and walked towards Lara with a determined step. "Lara, we need to have a serious talk with you," the man said sternly. "Yes, perhaps I have no right to interfere in your affairs, but still, who beat you?" "My husband." The girl burst into tears. "If you only knew how tired I am of all this." "Is he officially married to you?" Davis asked calmly. "Or is he just your roommate?" "I have nowhere else to live, so I live with him," the girl answered. "Many years ago my mother died. She burned down with our house. I was left alone. My mother gave me to Eric as a wife. So what time will you finish work today?" Jordan asked. "I'll send a man to pick you up. Do you have your papers with you?" "Yes," she answered quietly. "I'm sorry, I don't know you at all. I'm afraid of everything," Lara cried. "Don't be afraid," sighed the man. "Trust me, you won't go back to Eric. I'll buy you all the things you need. I need a housekeeper now, and I'll pay you well." It was obvious that the girl was very afraid, but she decided to get into the car that came to pick her up in the evening. "This is where your room will be," showed the owner of the house. "I have asked that you bring all the necessary things and uniforms. This weekend, you'll be completely free. You can do whatever you want. I have a separate person for the weekends, so don't think you will have to work all the time." It was very difficult for Lara at first. She was constantly afraid that her husband would come after her, but this problem was immediately solved by Davis. He went with his guys to the address given to him by the gas station cashier. Eric turned out to be a man about 55 years old. He was drunk. Jordan talked to him and warned him not to look for Lara again. From that day on, Eric forgot all about her. Lara had a hard time getting used to her new life. She had been living in fear for many years, so it took her a long time to see that the owner of the house had no evil intentions towards her. Almost 2 years had passed and Lara was 29 years old when the girl realized that she had fallen in love with her master. In fact, Jordan, Lara had been in love for a long time, but he realized that with such a traumatized psyche, she needed enough time until the girl started to trust people again. His sincere love helped Lara to come to her senses, and they played a modest wedding. Davis loved his wife very much, and how happy was the news that Lara was expecting a child. "Lara, my love, thank you," he said to his wife all the time. "You have made me the happiest man in the world." Lara was happy herself. Not only did she have a husband she loved, but now they would have a daughter. Everyone lived in anticipation of a baby girl, but one day Davis' phone rang. "Jordan, here's the thing. It's Lara's doctor. Your wife has a very rare condition. If she continues with the pregnancy, Lara could die." Davis asked in shock, "She won't be able to carry the baby?" "I'm sorry, but you have a very difficult choice to make." The doctor sighed with frustration in his voice. "Either your wife terminates the pregnancy in the 7th month and never gets pregnant again, or she gives birth. But I have no guarantee that she will survive the birth." Davis spent days just sobbing. He didn't know how to tell his wife. Finally, Lara couldn't take it anymore and started talking to her husband. "Jordan, what's going on?" she asked him. "You haven't seen your face for the last day. Is it something at work?" "Lara, you know." He tried to find the right words. "My darling, my love, I don't even know how to tell you." "Jordan, tell it like it is," the woman sternly ordered. "I'll try to understand you." "Lara, you have a very rare disease." Davis burst into tears. "We don't have much time. Either you get an abortion and stay alive, or the baby will survive, but you may die during labor." The woman turned pale. She was silent for a while, stood up, walked to the window. "I will give birth. This is my final decision," she said and left the office. As Davis was not prepared for the fact that his wife would die, her death was a real tragedy for him. The baby girl was born perfectly healthy. Her father loved her very much, but the loss of his wife did not pass for him without a trace. He longed for Lara very much. The first months the man just disappeared at the cemetery, but then gradually he began to be dragged down by business, and he gave himself a promise that he would spend as much time as possible with his daughter. It was exactly a year after Lara died. Davis spent more than an hour at his wife's grave. He let his driver go. He was in so much pain that he wanted to walk a little bit so the movement would cheer him up. The man left the cemetery, got on a bus, and made his way downtown. It was bustling. Davis really wanted to get lost among people. He looked as if through passers-by. He was not interested in anything at that moment. He just wanted to forget about everything for a while. He slowly walked along the sidewalk along the street. He didn't even look under his feet. Suddenly his gaze fell on a traffic light. He came up to it and noticed some car next to him. Instinctively, Davis looked into it. He stared blankly at the woman, but after a moment, he felt as if he'd been doused with boiling water. The man quickly ran to the door and looked at the driver carefully. "Lara?" He shouted in shock. "Lara, what are you doing here?" "Lara, wait," waved Jordan as the light turned green and the car drove forward. Davis rushed after her. He saw the car turn sideways. He sped up and ran out to meet her. A few seconds later, he felt a blow to his left leg, and Jordan fell to the asphalt from the pain. A minute later, a woman jumped out of the car. She was shouting something in some language. It was similar to English, but Davis didn't understand any of her words. "Lara, what's going on?" Finally, he got up. "Lara, it's me, your husband." "Jesus, what on earth is going on here?" With a strong accent said the stranger. "Are you out of your mind? Why did you throw yourself in front of my car?" "I'm not Lara. My name is Cindy." "No way," Davis said in shock. "Lara, why did you make this whole show?" Did you get the doctor to fake your death in childbirth? But why? I loved you so much. I don't know how I survived your death. Man, I'm telling you again, my name is Cindy, and I hope this was my first and last trip to Italy. God, how can you even live here? She was swearing in English. Jordan was in such stress and bewilderment that when he took one step, he immediately fell down. First you throw yourself under my car, and now you want to pretend that you feel bad? A stranger approached him. Is this your business here? Is this how you make your money? You know what? She took out her wallet and took out 200 euros. Take it and leave me alone. I don't want your money. Davis could barely speak. Lara, help me please, can you take me home? I'm tired of telling you that I'm not Lara. Cindy tried one last time to tell him. Come on, get in my car. The woman helped Jordan into the car and threw a belt on him and drove according to his instructions. What kind of day is this? The stranger was cursing all the way, in a language Davis didn't understand. When am I going to get out of here? Lara, don't you remember me? I kept saying Jordan. What about our daughter? Do you remember Amelia? A respectable man. Cindy looked at him angrily. I have no children, and fortunately no husband either. Tell me, how much longer do you think we have to travel? I have to leave Italy today. It's still probably an hour and a half to our house, quietly replied Davis. The man couldn't come to his senses. Everything was mixed up in his head. Oh shit! The stranger cursed. I'm going to be stuck here for another night. The driver and passenger were silent, each thinking about something else. Davis was thinking about how he could lure Lara into his house. The man was sure that when she saw their daughter, she wouldn't be able to play tricks on him anymore. The woman, however, lamented that she would have to spend another night in Italy. Lara, can I ask you a favor? Jordan looked at the woman. Let this be my last request. Please share dinner with me tonight, and then you can go wherever you want. Cindy looked at him in horror. It seemed to her that there was a catch to all of this at all. Maybe he organized for me to be kidnapped, she thought. And then for ransom, will Jack blackmail me? But when the woman drove up to the Davis house, she was very much surprised. Only someone with decent money could live here. Do you live here? The stranger asked in amazement. What a huge house. Yes, Jordan answered briefly. I beg you to help me into the house. I'll call a doctor to examine my leg, and then we'll have dinner. I promise I won't keep you any longer after that. The woman hesitated. She was very frightened by everything that was happening. Finally, Cindy agreed and drove up to the unfamiliar house. She helped him out of the car. Some man immediately ran up to her. He looked at Cindy in horror, but didn't say anything to her. Matthew, help me to my room, his host asked him. I fell and hurt my leg. The man turned back now and then and regarded the stranger with undisguised fear. Finally, the whole procession went up to the second floor, and Matthew put his master on the bed. Jordan took out his cell phone and immediately called. Bob, please come to my place. Said he to someone / I fell and hurt my leg badly. Yes, at my house. Thank you. The landlord hung up the phone. Did he see how shocked his domestic worker was? He kept glancing at Cindy. Matthew, please show our guest to Amelia's room, said Jordan. I'll wait for the doctor. Can you wait for me at the baby's room? He turned to Cindy. The woman could not understand what was going on, but decided to follow Matthew, who led her to some children's room. The man looked back at the woman and his face was pale. Cindy didn't really look where they were going. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that for a split second she couldn't even remember where she was. Finally, The man stopped at a door and opened it. A young woman with a small child appeared on the threshold. It was clear from her pink blouse that she was holding a baby girl. The girl looked at her guest in horror and recoiled. Cindy first cast a general glance around the room, then looked intently at the child. No special emotion was evoked in her. The governess had moved away from the woman and was standing somewhere in the far corner. The woman walked around the room. It was in the traditional style for small children. Cindy was about to leave the room and go downstairs to the living room to wait for the master of the house there, when suddenly her gaze fell on the pictures. They adorned almost the entire wall, but at first they seemed to the woman to be just decorations. "Who is that?" she asked aloud. "Who is this woman?" She turned toward the governess. "It's Amelia's mother." In a trembling voice, the girl answered. Her name was Lara. Cindy stared intently at the face she saw in the photograph. After a few seconds, a chill ran down her spine. The woman jumped up. She dropped her bag from her hands in surprise. "Where is she?" Cindy struggled to speak. "Can I talk to her?" "No," the governess replied briefly. "Exactly a year ago, she died in childbirth." "God, I can't understand anything," Cindy said in shock in English. "This woman looks a lot like me. Maybe I'm imagining all this. I'm just very tired today. I'm stressed out from Italy." The woman began to look at the rest of the pictures. They showed the man who had thrown himself in front of her car today, a woman who looked like Cindy, and a little girl. Apparently, it was the baby the girl was now holding in her arms. There was a rustle of some sort, and the same man who had accompanied Cindy here appeared in the doorway. He eyed the guest with interest, but she was completely indifferent to everything. "Jordan asked you to come down to the dining room," he said quietly. Jordan interrupted the woman. "Who is that?" "Is this the owner of this house?" The man nodded his head to her, and she followed him the whole time, looking back at the pictures that hung on the wall. Cindy waited for the man for about half an hour. She heard some voices in the hallway, a familiar voice thanking someone, and heard a door slam shut. A few minutes later, the master of the house himself showed up in the dining room. "Well, that's all right." He smiled. "The doctor said it was just a bad bruise." "That woman in the pictures in the baby's room, is that your wife?" Cindy asked him. "Yes," he answered briefly. "Her name was Lara. Amelia is our long-awaited daughter. Didn't the sight of our little girl make your heart ache?" I burst into tears, Jordan. "I thought you couldn't resist meeting our daughter." "Lara, I love you, can you understand that?" "Jordan," sighed the guest, "I can indeed confirm that I am very much like your wife, but I am not Lara. I have been living in America since I was 2 years old. This is the first time in my life that I've come to Italy on business, and I'll be honest with you, I'm in complete shock. I don't know how I can explain to you why I look like the woman I saw in the picture, but I can prove to you that my name is James Cindy. I'll call my lawyer. He can confirm it for you. I'm sorry to dash your hopes, but that's the way it is." The landlord looked at the woman with an uncomprehending stare. It was obvious that he refused to believe what Cindy was saying. He remained silent for a while, tears streaming down his cheeks. Suddenly his gaze cleared, and he looked at his guest carefully. "But there is no such resemblance in nature," the man said. "Yes, it may be so that people have some similarities, but to be so it is simply impossible. And this can only mean one thing. You are somehow connected with my wife." "That's out of the question." Cindy understood him. "At least according to the information I have no brothers or sisters. Are you sure about that?" Jordan looked at her intently. "What do you know about yourself?" "I mean before you came to America. As my father used to say, my mother died shortly before he moved. A woman started it. Naturally, I don't remember her. My father decided to radically change his life. Of course, he took a risk. I still do not understand how he decided to come to a foreign country with a small child. But I'll tell you the truth. My father said almost nothing about Italy. And I didn't take much interest in it myself. It turns out that your father, according to him, left Italy to earn money after his wife died. Davis reasoned. But for some reason he didn't tell you anything about it. Didn't your father want to come home? Suddenly the landlord asked. Never. The woman answered briefly. For as long as I can remember, it was out of the question. My father somehow persuaded my step-grandfather Matthew to take the first job from me. I grew up in gardens, you might say. While Dad worked, I rode in the arms, then the owner, then the head gardener, Uncle Jack, who always loved me. Grandpa was a strict man, but he treated my dad like a son. Dad always worked honestly, never drank or smoked. He was loved for his kindness and responsibility. Maybe that's why the garden owner's daughter Hannah fell in love with him. My stepmother was 10 years older than my dad, but that was never a barrier for them. I'd say they had a perfect relationship, and Hannah was always very good to me. I found in her not only maternal care, but also friendly love. Okay, Jordan thought with effort. If your father didn't like to reminisce about Italy, then there must have been something there that repulsed him. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you or your mother in any way, but it's strange that your father had no desire to visit her grave. Could it be that he didn't love her? It's hard for me to say, Cindy sighed. Perhaps he did. Once, when I was about 15, I wanted to talk to my father about it. Dad, I said, you could tell me about my mother. I miss her very much. He turned pale then. It was obvious he didn't know what to say. He paced back and forth nervously. Cindy. Finally, he said, your mother was a good person, but there is nothing more I can tell you, and I beg you never to ask me about it. It's all very strange, Davis concluded. It turns out that your father had some secret connected with Italy. What if your mother isn't dead? The man suddenly suggested. And an even bolder assumption. You were not hers alone. You had a twin sister. Perhaps more siblings. I don't know. Shocked, Cindy replied. This whole thing scares me so much, I'm starting to doubt everything. It's just that if it was really so, you could have close relatives in Italy, and she could be my wife. Jordan said in astonishment, I'm already dizzy from all this. The woman said tiredly, My God, I don't understand anything anymore. All right, I suggest you stay with me tonight. With a smile, said the owner of the house, and tomorrow morning we'll be seen, and now let's have dinner, or I'll go crazy from excitement. The host and his guest finished their dinner in silence. Cindy first decided to get herself a room in a hotel, but something inside her insisted on staying in this stranger's house. To her surprise, she slept through the night without a backward glance. Jesus! She looked at the clock in horror when she woke up. 10 hours? I haven't felt like this in a long time. Yesterday was such a busy day that I just overslept. The guest got dressed and went down to the living room, but no one was there. The sun was shining happily outside the window, and Cindy went out into the yard. She spotted the flower beds and trees and went to them. She closed her eyes and enjoyed the late scent of roses. Good morning, she heard someone's voice. How did you sleep? I hope you are well. Good morning, replied Cindy, seeing Davis approaching her. To my surprise, I have slept in so many years, she laughed. A man was walking through the garden with his daughter. He was carrying the girl in his arms. As soon as Jordan approached Cindy, the girl stretched out her arms to her. The guest froze in shock. The woman did not know what to do, but then instinctively, she took the little girl in her arms. The little girl smiled happily. "Amelia thinks you're her mom." Davis smiled. "You look like Lara, like 2 drops of water." Maybe she feels it intuitively, because her mother died in childbirth. "You know, I'm so sick of this story." The guest looked at him. "That I am ready to find out if I really have relatives in Italy. I'll tell you the truth, if they show up later, I will not survive another trip here." She laughed. "Is it really that bad?" The man asked her with interest. "It's different for you, I would say," she answered. "Everything here is very strange for me. I feel threatened all the time." "But that's true," sighed the host. "Everything here is so unpredictable that you don't know what or who will be waiting for you at the next turn. You with your European mentality, it is difficult to understand such a thing. But for us, it is already a habitual way of life." "I have a very good lawyer in Italy," looked at Davis. "Cindy. I'd like to hire him to look into this whole thing." "Cindy." The first time the host addressed the guest by her first name. "Since I'm the one who started all this, let me pay for your lawyer." The woman looked at him in bewilderment. She thought that Italians are really unpredictable people. You just don't know what to expect from them. But she liked Davis's generosity very much. "Good," the woman replied and looked lovingly at the girl. She hugged her and laughed, looking into Cindy's eyes. "Amelia, let's leave Auntie alone." Took the child in his arms. "Jordan, let Auntie walk around the garden. I'll be waiting for you in about 20 minutes for breakfast." The girl did not want to leave Cindy, and she began to cry. Now and then she turned back and held out her arms. "I am completely broken and out of sorts." Cindy said, "This whole thing will probably never end." The woman dialed Jack's number and warned him that she needed to stay in Italy for a few more days. Then dialed the number of the lawyer. "Matthew?" She said, "It's Cindy for you. Could we meet with you? Unfortunately, my story with Italy isn't over, and I'd like to hire you for a case." "Cindy?" the lawyer said in astonishment. "I thought you had already left." "Yes, I'm listening." Toward lunchtime, Matthew was already at the gates of the Davis house. The man was very nervous. He knew what kind of man he was. Working with people of this caliber was not only a matter of honor for him, but it promised to broaden his horizons considerably. "Good evening, Matthew." Cindy greeted the lawyer. "Do you know the owner of the house?" "Jordan Davis." The man extended his hand to the lawyer. "It's a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to your help. Nice to meet you too." The man shook his hand. "I'm willing to do whatever I can for you." "That's good. Let's go into the living room and talk," Jordan suggested. The host led the guests into a spacious room where they could sit down comfortably and talk normally. Not to say that Davis' leg was already moving well, but after a few injections he could walk painlessly. The man walked over to the table and picked up some papers and pictures. "Cindy, may I begin?" Davis asked the woman. "And you'll tell your story later?" "So, you might say, exactly 1 year ago, my wife died in childbirth. It was no surprise to either of us. The attending physician, Lara, that was my wife's name. I was warned when she was 7 months pregnant that she had a very rare disease. The choice was difficult, either have an abortion and lose the baby forever, or my wife was more likely to die in childbirth. Lara chose the life of the baby. Yesterday, as I was returning from the cemetery, I saw my wife sitting behind the wheel of the car. Naturally, I started yelling at her. I ran towards her, and she ran me down a bit, so to speak. But what was my surprise when Lara started to deny everything? I asked her to take me home. Walking was really hurting me. I hoped that when my wife saw our daughter, she would take pity on us and finally confess everything. But it didn't happen, because it wasn't Laura standing in front of me, it was Cindy. I didn't want to believe it for a long time, but it finally dawned on me that I was talking to a completely different person. These are pictures of my wife. They do look exactly alike. The lawyer looked at Cindy and Lara. So now you want to know if there is any relation between them? Yes, replied the landlord briefly. Now I will tell you everything I know about my wife. I met Lara at the gas station where she worked. So one day I saw that her face was broken. As it turned out, she had an alcoholic husband, but that wasn't what confused me. I was shocked when I found out that Lara, the mother, had sold her daughter to some man for a bottle. A few days later, she drunkenly burned down her house and burned herself in it. Lara had nowhere to go, so she lived with her rapist husband, who was more than 25 years older than her. Or rather, officially, Eric wasn't her husband. He turned out to be her roommate. Then, when we were already married, Lara told me that at first her mother didn't drink, but she was always living with one man or another. The girl was always afraid of them all. She didn't have any good memories of her past life. Cindy was shocked. She had the impression that in Italy everyone drinks. The woman couldn't believe that such a thing was possible. Of course, in America, there were sometimes such stories, but they were not, as here, at every turn. Matthew? After a long pause, Davis said to Cindy, "You've been dealing with my father's old house. Surely you must know something about it. Could you tell us about it?" "Cindy," sighed the lawyer, "I don't think we'll have any trouble finding out, but right now I can tell you that your father had a half-sister, not a sibling. When I looked into your case, I discovered that Lucy was the daughter of your father's stepfather. So those people, Paul and Lisa, have nothing to do with you. I'll be honest with you, I was devious at the time, and it's my fault. You know, I have no regrets." The woman reassured him. "I don't really need this house, especially my father never wanted to come back here. I don't think he even thought about this house." "Okay, can you give me a few days, please? I need to do some paperwork," the lawyer asked. "I don't think there's any criminality involved, so this will all be easy to figure out. Just in case, I would advise you, Cindy, to do a DNA test with your daughter Jordan. It can immediately confirm or deny your relationship." "Cindy, if you don't mind, we could do it tomorrow morning." The host suggested it. "I'll take a week off work. My guys can handle it without me." The lawyer asked a few more questions, gathered the information he needed, and left. Matthew refused to take money for the work, citing the fact that Cindy had already paid him for it, but Davis insisted that he would receive full compensation for the work done. What a stroke of luck! The lawyer rejoiced. This American woman brought me such luck. Who would have thought that from the most mediocre lawyer without connections, I will work for Davis? He promised me so much money for the job that it would cover all my annual expenses. Matthew couldn't get over it. It was a rainy October day when a strange man appeared at the wicket gate. His voice was husky. The boy cast a glance at his hands, which were cupped. "I'm here to see Miranda," he said dryly. "Is that your mother?" "Call her for me," ordered the man and waved his hand at someone. A girl, a teenager of about 16 years old, appeared from somewhere. She walked up defiantly and raised her head. "Mom, there's someone there to see you." The son came into the house. There's a man and a girl. The boy, who was 10 years old at the time, watched with interest what was happening outside. The window in the kitchen was big, and through it he could see everything. At first his mother looked at the stranger with surprise. He was telling her something, waving his arms. Then she hugged him, and they all went into the house. "We will live at your place for now," the guest said. "Then I'll earn money, and we'll buy a big house. Harry, this is Uncle Charles." The mother turned to her son. He will live with us now, and the girl's name is Lucy. She will be your sister." The boy did not like the guests very much. Uncle Charles had a wolfish look, and Lucy was always smiling achidically. Harry had lived with his mother for many years. He did not know his father. There was a rumor in the village that his mother had gone off with the farm director when he was 18. Of course, the boy saw some uncle coming to his mother's house, sometimes at night. As he grew older, he began to notice that these uncles changed, but what happened that day left an imprint on the child's entire life. From the very beginning, Lucy, Uncle Charles' daughter, began to set him up. She kept making up made-up stories. Uncle Charles scolded him at first, but one day he couldn't stand it and spanked the child with a belt, so much so that he couldn't sit down for a week. "Charles, why did you do that?" "I was arguing with Miranda's roommate. Harry's a good boy." "If he was a good boy, he wouldn't have done this to my daughter." He looked angrily at the woman, a devilish twinkle in his eye. As time passed, the beatings became more frequent. Lucy was devising more and more insidious plans. "Do you hear that?" Charles grabbed Miranda by the scruff of the neck. "Don't you realize who's boss?" That day, for the first time, Harry's mother got it in for him. From that moment on, Charles began to drink more and more, and he forced the boy's mother to drink. "Mom, why don't we run away from him?" One day the son suggested to his mother, "We'll hide and he won't find us." "Harry, what are you doing?" The drunken mother laughed. "He's my husband. I can't do without Charles." When Harry turned 16, he ran away from home. At first he hid in abandoned houses. Then he took a job as a shepherd for the season and lived in an abandoned house in a field. By the age of 18, he managed to raise some money, made himself a passport, and went to work in the city. A year later, he heard rumors that Charles had slaughtered his mother in a drunken outburst. He was locked up again. Lucy stayed at Harry's house. The guy decided to leave his past life behind once and for all, so he never even claimed his house or any other property. Harry was a hard worker. That's what the guy had decided for himself. The only thing that could help him get ahead was his hands. He had no education, of course. In town, he worked in a factory for a few years. Things began to go uphill. The guy was able to buy himself 5 kilometers from Verona housing. It was without special amenities, but his own. One spring, Harry was walking in the park after work. He was about 24 at the time. He was attracted by someone's voice. A girl was selling ice cream, and she was soliciting customers in a variety of ways. "The best ice cream in Verona." The girl shouted, "Before there's a line, come on over." "What kind of ice cream do you have?" the boy asked the perky saleswoman. "Plombard Eskimo?" "Whatever you want," she laughed. "Here you have Eskimo, and this is a very tasty strawberry cone. There is also with condensed milk and chocolate filling." "Wow," Harry smiled. "You've stumped me. I don't even know what to choose, so let's go with your flavor." "Banana ice cream with chocolate chunks, then." She gave the ice cream to the customer. "It's delicious." "Sorry, but at this price, you can't eat it every day." The customer sighed. "What do you want?" "What's cheap now?" With annoyance in her voice, she replied, "I have such a salary at this job that I can barely make ends meet. And here, if you're from the village and have no education, you can't get anywhere else." "Where are you from?" Harry asked her with interest. "I'm from Verona, and I'm from Cremona." The sales girl replied, "Susan." She extended her hand to the guy. The young people talked, but then, as luck would have it, a crowd of people gathered for ice cream, and Harry said goodbye to Susan and left. The next time they met was about 2 weeks later. Harry approached the girl. "How are you doing?" "How's work?" he asked. "Can I buy you an ice cream?" he suddenly offered. "I don't mind." The sales girl was happy. "Then I'll have my favorite banana ice cream and you. And today, I want to try the one with chocolate filling." The customer chose one. The young people were happy, eating ice cream and cheerfully discussing some business. Word of mouth, and Harry invited Susan for a weekend in a cafe. The girl was embarrassed at first, but then agreed. A couple weeks later, the guy asked her out. They didn't have a wedding. Harry and Susan just signed and began to live in his small house. There was one room and a kitchen and a toilet outside. You could probably get 200 or 300 acres of weeds out of the ground for a vegetable garden. "Susan, it's all right. We'll earn a little money and buy ourselves a nice house," Harry told his wife. And for the first few years everything was fine. But as time went on, Susan got tired of working as a saleswoman and was attracted to city life. "Harry, how can I walk around town in this?" The girl was indignant, looking at herself in the mirror. "It should have been in a landfill a long time ago." "Susan, be patient," her husband soothed her. "In a year, we will buy a new house, and there you can choose any clothes you want." "I want to dress well when I am still young, not when I turn into a wrinkled old woman." The wife persisted. Harry pushed on and took on the night jobs. He was tired, but Susan was always finding new reasons to stay at home after she stopped working. "You think it's easy?" She used to say to Harry. "I went to the interview today and the director said, for the first 3 months, you'll be paid half as much. It'll be your internship." "What do I need them for?" "Susan, you have to start somewhere." Her husband reassured her. "Try it with this one, gain experience, and then you'll be able to set your own terms." "Well, here we go," disgruntled wife replied. "Let them work themselves for such a salary." The situation worsened when Susan became pregnant. The girl was not only constantly cranky, she became simply unbearable. "I don't want those children." In a rage, she shouted, cursing her huge belly. "Why I married you? You ruined my life." "Susan, what are you doing?" Her husband asked in shock. "After all, these are our children." "I don't want them." "Throwing dishes off the table," she shouted. "If you want them, you have them." Harry tiredly picked up the dishes from the floor. They had just recently moved into a nice new house, and it had become known that Susan was pregnant. But the girl started to go crazy after that. She didn't want children. "It's all because of you," she sobbed. "I told you let's have an abortion. No, you insisted on these children, and what am I supposed to do now?" Harry didn't understand what was happening to his wife. She'd gone from what he thought was a kind girl to a monster. After Susan had given birth to the twins, she'd had no love for them from the very first minute. Harry was so tired after work, and also dealt with the children in the evening, it often seemed to him that he just could not stand it, and somewhere will drop dead, but Susan was not embarrassed. When the girls were 8 months old, the girl began to disappear in the evenings. She left the babies for her husband on various pretexts and came back at 2 a.m. Susan was not at all embarrassed. "Susan, are you completely crazy?" The husband was angry. "Where are you wandering around at night? You have little children, and you? What about me?" Angrily, she answered her husband. "I just want to live normally, and in fact, I'm filing for divorce." "What do you mean?" He looked at the girl in shock. "You want us to divorce?" "Yes," she answered briefly. "I don't love you, and I don't love your children either." Susan had a lover who she thought was a very powerful man. In fact, he was just a police officer. He was married, but in her dreams he had serious plans for her. John was an expert at this sort of thing. He'd thought it all through. "Susan, if you divorce him and leave him the children, then you will be left with nothing," he told his mistress. "I don't need anything from him." She hugged the man. "The main thing is to have you by my side. Let them choke on the children and this house. Do you realize that under the law, he not only can leave the property to himself, but also hang on you alimony? He may not work with the kids until they're 3 and stay home, but then you'll have to feed the kids. And since there are 2 of them, it's 25% of your official income. So even though I leave everything to him, I still have to pay him money?" The girl asked in shock. "That's what I'm talking about. You let's not boil. Everything here needs to be thought over." Seriously looked at her John. "So what? You'll help me with the money, right?" The girl didn't give up. "Susan, well, I will pay alimony for you. But who will pay alimony for my children if I divorce my wife?" "You?" Angry at Susan's stupidity, John. "It's a vicious cycle." She burst into tears. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Keep 1 child for yourself." "Answer the man. If anything, I'll cover for you, so you'll get the house. That way he can't file for child support or take your house away from you. If he makes a move, I'll talk to him." Harry did make a move, and John had a serious talk with him. "Look, I've got a fake case to pin on you, but this way it's a piece of cake," he told him. "So take your daughter and get the hell out of here." Harry did not know what to do. He had already accepted that he would not live with his wife, but where to go with a small child, the man could not even guess. Besides, he understood that Susan did not like his children, so he wanted to take the second child for himself. "Harry, you're a good guy." His boss once told him when he was going through divorce proceedings. "But my advice to you, get out of here. They won't let you live." "Lion, where am I going?" Through tears said the guy. "I have nothing. I lost everything. All the money I earned, I invested in a new house, and now they took it away from me. And I'm afraid for my second daughter. I don't want Susan to put her in an orphanage. She hates Lara. Listen, my nephew just went to America to pick apples. I'll give him a call and ask him about it." The Gov suggested it. "Maybe there's more people needed over there." "What about Cindy?" The boy asked excitedly. "Where am I going to put my daughter?" "I'll never leave her." "You'll go with your daughter, and there you'll ask the owners, explain everything to them." "Are they not human or what?" Liam suggested. A day later, the man called Harry. His nephew agreed to help. He arranged a visa through the owners and got permission to bring the minor child. Susan, without looking, signed the document and sent her ex-husband and daughter to hell. The guy was very afraid that his daughter would be taken away from him in America, but as soon as he confessed everything to his host Matthew, the man was just in complete shock. He not only hired the boy, he sheltered him. The girl was loved by everyone. A few years later, Hannah, the daughter of the owner, confessed to Harry in love. The woman was much older than him, but she felt a sincere warmth for him. Matthew, her father, was fine with this, and Harry became a full member of their family. Before he married Hannah, he had warned the woman that he wanted to take his second daughter to America as well. Hannah agreed to this. Moreover, she and her husband beat back numerous thresholds, but the girl was never allowed out of Italy. She had a mother, who at that time worked and provided for her child. Also, Susan had a house. Italy did not allow the child to be taken from the mother in favor of the father. "Harry, love, we did the best we could. Maybe that's the way it should be. I realize I need to let it all go." He hugged his wife. "But my heart still aches for Lara." And Harry had good reasons for that, although the man knew nothing about his wife and daughter, but the weight on his heart concealed what was really going on. Not 2 years later, Susan was abandoned by her policeman. Of course, John was not going to marry her. The girl was left alone with a small child in her arms. Her hatred for her ex-husband and her daughter only intensified. "It's all because of you." Susan threw everything she could get her hands on. "You ruined my whole life," she shouted to someone in the distance. "If it weren't for you, I'd be happy now, and I wouldn't have to feed your child." But Susan was afraid to give her daughter to an orphanage. The girl thought that then her house could be taken away from her, and she was not going to return to her village. Susan actively searched for a girl with a trailer, but no one was interested in her. Dysfunctional men were hitting on her. Finally, Susan decided on one. The main thing that he worked and fed her daughter, she decided then, and the rest I'll take care of myself. So in her house, first there was one Alki. He even officially married Susan and gave his patronymic and surname to her daughter, then another, then a third. The girl changed men like gloves, but no one from such a contingent, her needs were not satisfied. Susan herself did not notice how at the communal table she began to pour herself more and more often. At first it was innocent fun, but the woman did not even notice the moment she crossed the boundary and began to look for drinking companions. Lara was getting older and older. The girl in despair tried several times to escape from the house, but there was nowhere to go, and she returned to this hell. "Mom," sobbing daughter, "I beg you, stop it. Let's live normally." "Fuck off," answered her drunken mother. "You ruined my whole life. How I hate you." But the worst was ahead for Lara. The girl let her mother go only when she sold her for a bottle of vodka. From that moment, Lara had no mother anymore. Due to constant stress on the background of fears, the girl eventually developed a very rare syndrome. Pregnancy, her condition deteriorated sharply. The next morning, Jordan with her daughter and Cindy went to the lab for a DNA test. "Cindy, for what it's worth, I wouldn't want you to have a negative impression of Italy," said Davis as they left the lab. "So I suggest you take a drive around our area. You up for it?" "Let's do it." The woman agreed. "It's a lot of pressure to wait anyway. It would be better for us to distract ourselves. Then I suggest we take a walk in the upper park. It's beautiful there. And go to the rivers. They have such beautiful views." Jordan smiled. "I'm not much of a guide, but I'll tell you something." The car stopped in the parking lot near the upper park. Davis was driving today, so he asked Cindy to hold Amelia. The little girl was a little cranky and quickly fell asleep. The woman looked down at her with pleasure, her face brightening. Jordan got out of the car and retrieved the stroller in which Cindy had placed the little girl. They strolled happily through the park, talking about business, about markets. My step-grandfather was originally aimed at fruits for middle-class exports, and above, the econo never interested him. A woman told me, "Is it easy?" "No. Now that I'm doing it all myself, I'd say it's very difficult. We position our apple as an eco-product, so we have to meet the highest standards." "I understand," the man replied, "but we don't have many people willing to pay for a good product," he sighed. "Or rather, I would say that only the middle class can afford it, and in Italy, there are not so many of them. As an entrepreneur, I can safely say that I wouldn't make much money from an eco-product. I would have to lie that I have juice from gardens and fields that are not treated with chemicals, or I would have to reduce my production because at such an inflated price for eco-juice, my product would simply not sell in such quantities. If you look at the gardens that grow in Verona, they are far from being organic gardens. They use chemicals at all stages of agitation. I can safely say that we are not ready for this transition yet. You know, the demand for organic products has probably increased in the last 10 years. Cindy continued the conversation. And I don't want to lie, but for example, Scandinavian countries, Germany, France are now focused on organic products, so it's easy to work with them. But if you go to the market in America, you will find cheap apples or pears grown using, so to speak, traditional methods. And there is nothing wrong with that. That's the way it should be. The population has different layers. For one reason or another, not everyone can buy healthy products. But there are those who are ready, so you are also benefiting as we are. You supply a certain part of the population with your products. It would be much worse if those people couldn't buy any juices at all. So you don't think there's any contradiction in that? Davis looked at the woman with interest. Why should there be? She smiled. Perhaps in 50 years there will be such technologies that will allow us to grow any product without chemistry. Then it will become natural, but right now we have to think about what opportunities are available to different segments of people. Jordan really liked the way Cindy looked at these things. There was a sense of reasonableness in her. She didn't categorize everything as good or bad. The woman tried to find a middle way, so to speak, in everything. This was the first time Davis had encountered such a thing, and the man liked the approach very much. Cindy rolled the stroller with pleasure. She glanced now and then at the sleeping girl. God, we're like a family. She smiled to herself. Who would have thought that all this would happen to me? I'm starting to feel different here now. Maybe that's the beauty of Italy. You go through a lot of stress at first, and it's only when you get hit over the head that you start to notice the really important things. After the park, Davis took his guest to the river. He showed the woman the most beautiful places. Amelia was already awake and sat in Cindy's arms, taking the most active part in their walk. But by 1 o'clock the girl was hungry. She was no longer satisfied with what her father had taken for her. Well, Amelia, let's go home. Stroke the child on the head, father. We need to feed you properly, and we're hungry too. Right, Cindy? The woman nodded her head and smiled. The tension inside her was easing. Cindy was feeling better, and the baby was taking up almost all of her attention. The woman didn't even want to let her out of her arms. God, I must be out of my mind, she thought to herself. She thought to herself, but now I feel what it means to have a child. The woman smiled. For the remaining 3 days, Davis and her guest took in the other sights of the city of Verona and beyond. They talked all the time. There seemed to be no topic that the man and woman could not discuss. Cindy felt very at ease with this man. It was as if Davis and his young daughter had become an integral part of her life. Who would have thought it would happen like this? Jordan thought to himself, Cindy and Lara seemed to be the same person, but they were so different. But in spite of that, I like the woman very much. I can be friends with her. She doesn't like falseness, and that's very good. Finally, the day came when the lawyer called. He asked Cindy to pick up the DNA test tomorrow, but not to open it yet. Let's do it together, and then I'll tell you all about it. Matthew suggested. It was evening. Davis and his guests were having dinner. The man glanced curiously at the woman every now and then. You know, Jordan, I'm so nervous. My hands are shaking. She said to the man. In any case, everything will be fine, he smiled. We'll have a chance to learn about your past, and then you can decide what you want to do with it. Perhaps you will choose to forget it. I still can't believe this is happening to me. Cindy sighed. It's just unbelievable. Well, if your roots are from here, it's to be expected. Davis replied. You're the first generation of your family in America, and if you look at all this, you can see how many of your relatives might live in Italy. I never even thought of that. Cindy looked at him. Of course I have relatives here, that's obvious, but I didn't particularly want to know anything about them. That's why it all came as such a big surprise to me. First, my lawyer told me that my father happened to have a sister here, and then it turned out that I had a cousin and a cousin as well. That night, Cindy didn't sleep much. She kept thinking that tomorrow she would finally find out the whole truth. "Are we ready?" asked the lawyer when they were all gathered at the hotel. "Cindy, please open the test." The woman's hands were shaking so much that she could barely manage this simple task. Cindy opened the results and froze in shock, Davis staring at her in amazement. "So Amelia is my niece." She barely spoke and covered her face with her hands and cried. Jordan did not believe her words and took the test from Cindy. He immediately turned pale. Of course, they both thought it was a possibility, but neither of them fully believed it. "So, you, Cindy, and Lara were twin sisters." The lawyer began his story. "Let me tell you right off the bat, your father's life was very difficult. His mother drank, his stepfather constantly beat the boy, but then when Harry married and he and Susan, that was your mother's name, had children, his wife began to walk away from him. She hated her daughters, you and Lara. Your mother took everything from your father, and she was afraid to give up her second daughter. Susan led a life of debauchery, so by the time she was 40, she was a drunk. Oh my God, that's awful." Cindy couldn't take it anymore and cried. "How could you not love your children like that?" After the lawyer left, Cindy could not calm down for a long time. She walked over to Davis. "Jordan, you'll forgive me, but I'd better leave," said the woman. "I need time to think about this and accept it." "I understand," the man replied grudgingly. "Cindy, Amelia and I will be waiting for you at any time." He hugged her goodbye. "Jack, where are you?" shouted Cindy, walking from one apple alley to another. "Did you go to the old swing?" The woman saw an elderly man with a little girl in his arms. He was gently placing her on a makeshift swing. "Like this." The gardener held the girl. "Well, do you like it? I'm going to take you for a ride." Cindy stood and watched as Jack lovingly handled her daughter. She couldn't take it anymore and went over to him. "I love you so much." She wept. "You've done so much for me, and now Amelia's in your arms all the time." "Well, not in yours." He laughed, looking at Cindy, a huge belly. "That's why I'm a grandfather. Your husband is always busy. He doesn't have time for you yet." After Cindy returned home to America, she soon realized that she not only cared for her niece, but also for her father. Davis was experiencing the same thing. After a month, he couldn't stand it and flew to visit Cindy in America. Jack took an immediate liking to the man. After another 3 months, Jordan and Cindy married. The man immediately decided that he had already tried to make things happen in his niche in Italy, but new opportunities were opening up for him in America. He sold his factory in Verona and opened a high-end juice factory, not far from Cindy's gardens. So now they were the largest exporters, not only of apples, but also of all-natural eco-juice. Despite the fact that the man initially had difficulties with language, he quickly got along with people, and the workers loved him for it. "He looks a bit like our old owner Matthew," they whispered, "only he's much easier to work with." A year and a half later, to their surprise, Cindy got pregnant and Jordan was over the moon. But when the doctor told them that the couple would have twins, 2 boys, the parents almost went crazy with joy. "It's okay, Cindy, be patient." Jack hugged his favorite. "Soon your boys will come, the real hares, so I will carry them in my arms and ride on this swing." The woman kissed her daughter and slowly walked to the beginning of the orchard. She stopped at a single apple tree, the trees now abundant with purpose. Cindy closed her eyes and enjoyed their sweet fragrance. What a pity Daddy didn't live to see these days, ran through her mind. If he had been alive, though, I wouldn't have had to go to Italy. I wouldn't have met Jordan and Amelia. Perhaps my dad gave me the best gift I've ever gotten in my life, so I am very grateful to him and to Italy. The woman noticed multicolored ribbons developing in the distance. Cindy stroked her large belly and slowly headed for the exit. Before getting into her car, she looked at her garden once more. "How much do I love you?" she pronounced, looking at the trees. "If there were no you, there would be no me. You created the Cindy I know."
Subscribe and click the bell. Stephen Faber has distrusted women since he was a child. His mother was to blame. His relationship with Camille was complicated and strained. The woman was known as demanding and intransigent to other people's shortcomings. Therefore, when in his youth he dropped out of college, his mother annoyingly showed him her contempt. For a whole year afterward, she nagged him and called him unemployed. Every day he heard the same phrase, "When will you get off my neck?" The last course left, and he didn't make it. A weakling. Life with such a woman was not pleasant. She couldn't accept her son's independence. So she put all the household chores on the boy's shoulders. But Stephen did not like to do household chores, and often under a plausible pretext to shirk the tedious work. In addition, she flooded him with criticism. Camille hated his long hair, which was shaved at the back of his head into a ponytail. She was infuriated by the careless style in Stephen's clothes. And most annoying of all was his nightlife, gambling online or going to the city's hot spots. But they weren't the guy's true hobbies. He simply found discharge in them when his mother had urgent business and she tightened her iron grip. Stephen enjoyed sitting at home, watching television, and reading books. Camille was a successful broker out of forking out decent money. Stephen, on the other hand, was wasting it. He was not wasteful, he just wanted to do everything to spite his mother. Since childhood, she considered her son a worthless person, worthless for nothing and weak character. Not once in her life did she consult with the boy growing up. The woman only told him how to live his life. But he was completely deaf to her moralizing. Just did not allow the usurper to break his protective shell. It was a silent but stubborn protest. Sure, Stephen was used to the luxuries his mother surrounded herself with, but she did it out of pure selfishness, because everything in the house was arranged to her liking, and she was used to having her orders obeyed immediately. The mansion was 15 minutes from the city, near a small picturesque river surrounded by a coniferous forest. Stephen knew how to get aesthetic pleasure from communicating with nature, so he liked to walk around the neighborhood in the evenings. This habit was formed in his early childhood from the time when his father lived with them, and Stephen felt needed and loved. Even now, having become an adult and saying to himself the cherished word, his father his soul as if defending, becoming weak and receptive heart, warming the craving then and pleasant feeling of love and hope. Unlike Camille, his father Sam was the embodiment of the power of dignity and kindness. Many women looked up to him. You bet, such a specimen of enormous stature, majestic and muscular with a body in relief. He had lived and worked in the circus since he was a little boy. Such a monumental man dared not offend. He could not even get into a conflict situation that would make him angry. No one argued with him. This giant was a soft and kind dad. Next to him, Stephen felt protected, and he grew up with absolute fearlessness in his heart. He grew up very brave because his peers in kindergarten and at school looked up to his dad with subservience. They showed Stephen every respect and honor. His father's authority was unquestionable. It was worth people to look at him, and they immediately understood what real power is. Almost 10 years. Life with him suited Camille. Although there was no mutual understanding between the parents, they often quarreled and loudly clarified their relationship. The father did it calmly and dignified, and the mother theatrically and without. So it seemed to everyone a complete hysteric. Stephen did not understand at all. What normal man could live with her mother? Her feisty temper could only be tolerated because of her amazing outer beauty. Camille in her youth was graceful and well-built. You could paint portraits of her face. A light blush was always colorful on the delicate pink aviator, the girls framing it, delicate blonde curls. Camille's eyes were big and bright blue. Her nose was small and her lovely lips had a beautiful shape and pleasant fullness. Camille was now in her 50s, but she remained an interesting woman, a friend. She always told me that she enjoyed the attention of men. This was the real truth. Indeed, after her father, she had had many suitors who pecked not only at her physical attractiveness, but also at her financial solvency. Stephen was used to having strange men show up at their house and then disappear. He didn't even bother to memorize their names. All these men seemed to him to be just background to his life, and cheap and of poor quality, something small and insignificant, not worthy of attention. None of these living characters could compare to the image of his tragically departed father. His departure happened quite unexpectedly and broke the whole destiny of a 9-year-old boy. One day, Sam went on tour with the circus. They were quite successful. That year, it was a dry, hot summer, and for some unknown reason deep in the night, most of the circus group members died in a fire. The performers had saved money on a hotel, and so they slept in caravans. From one of them, the fire spread to the others, and the hot flames spared no one. Only 2 administrators returned to their hometown, who did not skimp to spend the night in the hotel at their own expense. That was that. One afternoon, Stephen was left alone. Yes, he lived with his mother, but her attitude to her son was rather cool. Therefore, after the death of his father, the boy could not find anywhere that blessed source of unconditional love, which accepts the whole person and forgives him imperfections. Stephen would have liked to remain an open, brave, and kind boy, but circumstances did not allow him. His mother demanded that he stop being a sissy, went all the way, and with others behaved harshly. And all the peers, who subserviently ingratiated to him during his father's lifetime, now became insolent and insolent. They had been taking revenge on Stephen for years for Sam's strength. They laughed, they called him names, they beat him. At first he tolerated it, but then he became embittered and defensive, and showed his classmates his rage all at once. He didn't have to be friends with anyone else, but they stopped touching the boy. There was a big scandal at school when he bit their hands like an animal. He was stigmatized at meetings and councils, but no one wanted to understand the true motives behind the child's behavior. No one ever recognized that he was beating his teeth into the hands that had repeatedly stabbed him. No one ever realized that it was an outburst of humiliated boyish ego. After this incident, Faber Jr. was enlisted in the category of vicious bullies, but he did not make excuses to anyone. It was to his advantage. Finally, his classmates would leave him alone, afraid to avoid him. As always, people bowed their heads to boldness and strength. Stephen liked being alone more and more. He consciously chose silence. The boy rejoiced when classes were over and ran home with pleasure. There he would immerse himself and enjoy the solitude. His mother was always late at work, but even if she came home early, she was rarely interested in her son's affairs. All her questions were superficial, and she never listened to the answers. Camille was fantastically engrossed in her life. In the evenings, she and her girlfriends liked to go to restaurants, have another glass of expensive champagne or dabble in brandy, then spend time with a man and leave for an all-nighter with her beau at a hotel, or bring the Playboy home. Stephen spent all his free time on the computer. All his friends were on the other side of the screen. He loved the confined space of his own home and never went out. Camille had told her son explicitly that she dreamed of him living an independent life. And now, after he had dropped out of training, her hopes of getting rid of her own child soon were dashed. So she decided to lock him up. And Camille methodically sued her son for lack of a job. She strongly disliked his friends and girlfriends, although there weren't many. In the end, she gave him an ultimatum to either go to work for her firm or move out of the house to earn his own bread. Stephen was stuck in the office for over 2 weeks undergoing training. His mother strictly monitored it herself, sorting out his gaps in knowledge, blunders, and mistakes in practice. However, to her surprise, the woman began to notice that her son was rapidly advancing in the profession, had a good sense, and developed analytical skills. She did not wonder where her eyes had been before and why she thought the boy was an Ulyss. The woman was accustomed to extract her own benefit from any situation, so she immediately put her son in a responsible position so that everything would look rank in the eyes of inspecting organizations and in front of employees. Camille bought her son a fake diploma, and he officially started working. If in this son began to suit her completely, now she clung to his personal life, demanded to get a permanent lady of the heart, said that she wanted grandchildren. Stephen wondered to himself why she would do that. She rarely sees her son, and she communicates through the lip. And here are grandchildren. Probably her friends have made their own. She's got nothing to brag about. Stephen introduced her to 2 girls from the office. He said that he was friends with these young ladies and that they worked for her. Camille met them for a long time, explaining that these pseudo-ladies are not suitable for the role of his girlfriends at all. Stephen began to avoid such conversations, but his mother became more and more insistent every day. The boy was discouraged by her pressure and constantly invented excuses to run away from home. He could not tell his own mother that it was her example that had formed his disdain for women. He looked upon them only as objects for the fulfillment of his intimate needs. Stephen thought they were all mindless dolls. It did not even occur to him that girls could be interesting individuals. The prospect of a marriage relationship in general made him giddy and twitchy. He remembered for the rest of his life how his father suffered, how he wanted to be independent of his wife's whims. But his mother had blackmailed him, using her son's responsible attitude and guilt. The only things Stephen held dear in this world were professions and the personal freedom of a girl he did not cling to by means of charm, intelligence, or modesty. He paid attention only to physical data, evaluated the figure, height, breast size, curves of the body. The guy did not even imagine that such a lady would be with him constantly every minute, irritate him with her rank. He had set a boundary of socializing with women, right from his bed. They were headed out the door. Stephen loved solitude and did not tolerate even his mother's presence around him, and strangers were out of the question. But one had to know Camille to realize she would not stop until she got the desired result. It was not necessary to wait long, because she herself decisively organized a date for her son with the girl she liked. Stephen decided not to contradict his mother in order not to create a conflict situation. He agreed to this play. In the shower, of course. The guy was furious, or his mother's wave of rage. And how was it not to be indignant? This woman had given complete oblivion to his childhood years and now brazenly invaded his private life. She's the right woman for you, Evelyn. Recently moved to our neighborhood, well-to-do parents, but she's so eager to live on her own. I found her a house a few days ago, not far from ours for rent. I've been in touch with her family. They're our equals. I've known her mother since I was a student. Emily was one of the nicest and most well-mannered girls at the Institute. And if Jenna's the name of the girl is anything like her mother, and I'm pretty sure you'll like her. Stephen was nervous about his upcoming meeting with this young lady and resented the match. There's no point in inviting her over. She'll be embarrassed. We'll talk on neutral territory, Camille suggested. It was her mother's decision. Stephen wondered very much how she had managed to let the situation out of her control. He sighed with relief and nodded in agreement. Jenna picked him up. The next evening, Stephen left the house. In a shallow glimpse of rain, he saw a silver open-top Chevy pull into the driveway. The car wasn't new, but it looked solid. A bright brunette with a boyish haircut jumped out. Leather jacket, dry red pants, and a turquoise scarf around her neck. What looked like cowboy boots and bright cherry lipstick. She slammed one hand on the hood. With the other, she dutifully obeyed. No, This girl was not cultured, quiet. Straight back, swift gait, confident look, pretty mouth and round aching chin. A graceful nose. Stephen felt a power emanating from this social lady. She gave him a firm hand and manfully squeezed his fingers in her palm. "I suppose you know my name." She turned to Stephen. "That's right. You do," he smiled. A sly expression appeared on Jenna's face. "Well, I know all about you from Camille. Worthless, weak-willed, in need of constant attention and feminine care." That's how she characterized her own son. Stephen came closer to the girl, put his arms around her waist, and pressed her against him. "My mother was so busy with herself that she didn't even notice how her son grew up, became a man without her participation. That's why the picture she has in her head doesn't match reality at all. Yeah, I'm a lone wolf. Yes, I'm a lone wolf. I'm not made for sentiment. But I know how to communicate with women, and you will have the opportunity to make sure of it." Laughing guy in the face of the command. The girl was not embarrassed and did not pull away. She calmly endured direct eye contact with him, and even smirked slightly. When Stephen let go of Jenna, she walked around the car, leaned over to the control panel, and performed some simple manipulations. Immediately, the top of the car tilted up. "But then let's get away from this house and into the wind," the girl suggested. Stephen opened the doors in front of her, and then sat down in the comfortable chair next to her. "That's a hell of a car you've got. How long has it been yours?" "Evelyn's been asking for about a year. My girl's a fire." And she got into a long conversation about battery valves and gasoline prices. What made Stephen realize he was a passionate car enthusiast? "I've been having trouble with the open top. Keeps coming down at the worst possible times. Just like a pain in the ass." The girl continued her monologue. Before breaking down, "There is a peculiar sound. I stop the car and strengthen it manually." Behind the conversation, Stephen did not notice how it began to blow his nose, and the sky was covered with steel clouds. "It looks like we need to look for a secluded spot. It's getting darker by the minute. It looks like it's going to rain." Stephen turned to the girl. "I know a cozy place. Let's go." Evelyn put on the gas. She drove Stephen to a restaurant on the other side of town. A few steps from her house, the parking lot employee grinned into his mustache. As she helped the guy open the door, the car door, it jammed shut. Stephen felt as if the girl was patronizing him. It caused some awkwardness, but at the same time it felt good. Stephen had grown up in a deficit of care and could therefore appreciate its manifestations. He lifted his head up, and at the same moment streams of water rushed down from the sky. The young men ran toward the restaurant. Half darkness reigned there, and a snowy melody poured through the hall. The bartender looked sympathetically at Jenna and Stephen. He gestured with his hand to call them to follow him. In the back room, the guy handed them 2 strong towels, and they wiped their damp heads. The bartender smiled affectionately at the girl. "You're adventurous as always." Stephen realized that Jenna and the young man had known each other for a long time. "Well, yes, it's me." The girl laughed. All 3 of them returned to the hall. Evelyn approached a vacant table in its depths. "Come here," she whispered toward Stephen. He walked toward her, and she pulled him toward the table. There they sat across from each other. Soon a waiter approached the couple, and they placed their order. Or rather, Evelyn made it. She was very attentive to Stephen, and it seemed to him that it was not Camille, but she herself who had taken the initiative to get acquainted. Jenna quickly understood his tastes and predilections. She took a quick look at the menu and decided what he would drink and eat. What she chose, surprising, was her preference in alcohol. In large portions, she devoured Jack Daniels, and Stephen picked up a bottle of collectible red wine. It was immediately obvious that Evelyn was a regular at this establishment, because all of its employees were eager to please her, plowing around like moths. Suddenly, Stephen realized that the society of this girl was very pleasant to him. He did not let himself be broken by his mother, did not succumb to her influence. But Jenna's strength is soft, quite different. She was attentive. showed great interest in the life of the guy, and unobtrusively cared. That's the payoff. Stephen asked her to tell me about herself. I was surprised at how interesting the girl's fate was. She was a little older than him by more than 2 years. She was born into a well-to-do family, but early on she wanted independence, so she started her own business several times. The initial capital was allocated to her by her father, but the first attempts were unsuccessful. He failed. Now I'm doing just fine. She smiled, taking one sip of whiskey after another. It was amazing, but Jenna had become a successful businesswoman. She owned several fashion magazines. This girl was obsessed with everything. She passionately talked to Stephen about the intricacies of her profession. And then, feeling that her narration bored the interlocutor, told the guy about her hobbies. They were somewhat extreme. Hiking in the mountains, racing on kayaks on raging strong rivers, swimming in forbidden places. Stephen could only wonder that his new acquaintance was not into space travel. At the end of the evening, he was fascinated by the girl. Her determination, courage, and faith in her own strength could be envied by any man. He was afraid to admit to himself that the girl had touched his heart. Jenna was different from many others. She was interesting to be with. Among many charming, intelligent, and beautiful women, she stood out. There was in her some kind of mesmerizing mystery. Next to this girl's soul arose some inexplicable awe. Wanted to drown in a relationship with this reckless representative of the weaker sex. Stephen caught himself at the thought that all his previous romances did not cause him the desire to open up and behave relaxed. They had been smooth, unremarkable encounters with a slight tinge of lust. How many of them had been such arousing his quiet interest? Dozens, hundreds. In general, Stephen was driven by a single desire to add to his collection of men. By and large, these were women who were completely alien to him. Jenna, on the other hand, had managed to become his own for the evening. He didn't want to part with her. In all, her appearance distorted such inner confidence that she involuntarily attracted looks from the outside. But that wasn't what attracted a man. I have not seen such beauties. With amazement, he caught himself at the thought that he admired her swift gait, radiant smile, manner of gesticulating. Stephen watched with awe the new feeling that was budding in the depths of his soul. It was an attractive one. The condition was unusual for him. It bathed him in cocktails, excitement, involvement. The guy couldn't understand at all what was clinging to his dictates. It was something inexplicable. He'd only met her today, but he'd immediately accepted all of her as she was. Now it seemed to him that he had known her for years. This was the way she was his own. He felt no shadow of embarrassment or discomfort in her presence. Stephen realized that he was completely relaxed around her. Literally, within hours, he realized that this was his woman. Not once did he get bored while talking to her. Not once did he think about business or anyone else. Evelyn, really absorbing all his attention. At the same time, the girl was not intrusive and did not claim adoration or love. Stephen realized that in front of him was a completely independent person, and whatever their relationship in the future, he would not be able to own her completely. Jenna would always have her own world, hidden from everyone else, only at her own will. She will open the doors to it briefly and only to a select few, but will never fully let anyone in, ever. Not because she does not trust, but because it is her way of life, the need to have that very soulful island where you can freely enjoy your own fantasies, dreams, and reflections. Let's date, Stephen suggested. Girls. Seriously, she laughed. Yes, I think we're right for each other. Or maybe I'm wrong, he asked. No, it seems that way. Evelyn looked at him point blank, and then Stephen felt a languid, passionate feeling enveloping him. Despite the fire of desire that had enveloped him, he remained outwardly calm and cold. Jenna looked at him with her marvelous velvet brown eyes, and Stephen read understanding in them. The girl silently rose from the table, and he followed her. The rain had stopped outside, and the city was illuminated by the last rays of the setting sun. They raced in her limousine through the empty streets. Then a thick purple twilight descended upon the land. The couple entered a posh house with no one inside. Evelyn led Stephen into her bedroom. The room was in semi-darkness. She turned on only one night light, offered him a shower, and after he heard herself disappear into the bathroom, she came into view. Stephen, about 10 minutes later, and without false fuss, threw off her towels. The boy followed her example. He admiringly looked over her slender young body, then boldly approached her and enclosed the girl in an embrace. Even in intimacy, she did not belong to him completely. He then slipped away, then hot, then cold change of her emotional states, surprised and turned the guy on at the same time. He really wanted to possess her in every way. But even after he had possessed the girl and was left with the feeling that Jenna did not belong to anyone, nevertheless, he enjoyed being with her immensely. She knew what men wanted and knew how to enjoy intimacy with them herself. The girl easily gave him her body, but she wouldn't let anyone near her soul. Well, he pondered, so be it, but she's the most amazing woman I've ever met. Yes, I realize there will always be a distance between us. This is a woman who is a loner by nature. And of course, she'll never be my wife. She just won't want to lose her freedom. But I won't force her. Let her be with me only as long as she wants to be with me. She'll leave. It'll hurt, but I'll let her go because I realize Evelyn is a free bird. And no shackles, not even the greatest love or passion, can keep her from flying solo. And now he enjoyed any communication with the beautiful girl, her gaze, not arbitrary body movement, languid sigh, and next to her the whole world remained somewhere behind. Stephen was immersed in that unchanging mystery of being when he and she were alone together. They were united by a strong attraction. Stephen could not regulate his communication with Evelyn. The place and meetings were always chosen by her herself, and he only waited to listen to the roar of the engine of her Cadillac. The guy waited and prepared for every date with her, so the feeling he harbored for the young woman was a pinch of longing. He realized that someday this connection would suddenly cut off, and he would lose forever. She overshadowed all his other women, became that fatal beauty, next to which it was impossible to hook up even one innocent affair. The other ladies lost to her from the beginning because they dissolved in the shadow of her charisma. She was too bright and wonderfully nun-like. Evelyn's relationship was passionate, and at the same time, there was a certain detachment between them from each other. The girl often plunged into her inner world and revealed to the guy only some of her qualities. Therefore, Stephen sometimes felt abandoned and lonely. Sometimes he had no information for weeks about what his beloved was doing, but he bore it stoically. It was ready to tolerate everything for the sake of a couple of dates with her. Anticipation about the end of their relationship constantly tormented the soul of the man, as if he stood on a slippery stone in the middle of the raging elements and was afraid to fall. But the tragedy that occurred in life was more terrible than all his fantasies. It literally tore his soul to shreds. Stephen certainly knew that his woman had other men, and she often spent time with them. But the horrible revelation was that Evelyn was on drugs, and had been for a long time. Throughout their entire relationship, he had never noticed any signs of it. This sad circumstance determined the final chords of their love. Once again, Evelyn disappeared for a long time, and she was found breathless in a city hotel room. The cause of death was a drug overdose. Stephen was running around like a wounded animal. He wasn't ready to let Jenna go, not for good. He hadn't intruded into her world while she was alive, but to lose her irrevocably. No, it was beyond him. This tragedy had transformed Stephen from a young boy into a mature man. He had no friend or family shoulder to lean on during this difficult time. He experienced personal misfortune all alone, and it broke the lad's soul. He was still long stranger to the bottomless gaze. Jenna's velvet voice. Some nights he'd jump out of bed covered in vapors. He thought he could taste the sweet taste of her lips and the exultant scent of her body. In time, Stephen came to terms with it, but a ringing emptiness settled inside him. He began to fill it with alcohol and promiscuous sex. In the moment, When the man got drunk and indulged in flat successes with strangers, it seemed to him that the pain was going away. However, when he woke up in the morning, heavy emotions encompassed his soul in an even tighter ring. Stephen sank deeper and deeper into the abyss of drunkenness and debauchery. In this frenzy, he could not even properly mourn the departure of his mother, did not want to forgive her coldness and indifference, and he could not let her go to the next world with gratitude for his birth and all that she had given him on this sinful earth. The resentment remained in his heart. Stephen was fiercely angry at his mother and his beloved as if they were alive. The only thing that kept him afloat was business worries sobering the young man. As he labored in the office, he felt like a man wallowing in the pain of loss. Stephen realized that he was probably doomed to be alone. To meet someone like Evelyn again was impossible. He had given up hope of personal happiness. To keep from going mad, he was looking for new adventures. And now, with a swaggering, unsteady gait, he was walking through the city. Soft light poured in from the windows of the houses, and appetizing smells wafted through the windows. Somewhere a television was on, somewhere music was playing. It seemed to the man that there in the walls of these houses all people were happy, and someone needed them. He was in a hurry to get rid of this feeling and to leave the territory, where smelled cozy and happiness. Not because he was jealous, but because he was getting worse there. The man's hair fluttered in the wind, and he kept walking, unable to see the road. Out of the lilac haze of fog, a woman's silhouette appeared right in front of him, and he boldly went to get acquainted. The lady was beautiful and uninhibited. He stood in front of her and put his hand on her shoulder. The stranger did not even flinch, and Stephen felt better, for he felt the warmth of a human body. There was a gaping emptiness and an animalistic glint in the woman's eyes. He understood her without words, took her under his arm, and together they moved forward. At the inn, the night guest treated Stephen without resistance or objection. She gave herself to him. At 12 o'clock, he woke up in bed and found a luscious, hungover blonde beside him. His head split open, but he needed to get to the office, as he silently started to pack. The girl's face reflected bewilderment. "Were you paid to stay until 2? Let's stay together. We spent such a beautiful night." Stephen nodded silently. Overcoming the growing disgust in his soul was a mixture of guilt and squeamishness. He had experienced it when saying goodbye to random ladies. This condition was repeated every time. Stephen carefully concealed this attitude from his partners, but could do nothing about his own feelings. "I'm gonna shower and go to work. Will you leave a phone number?" the blonde asked. "Text me yours. I'll call you back." It was a phrase Stephen said to every woman he spent the night with, but he never called any of them back. Under the cool lines of the water, he came to his senses, but the munchies from last night were slowly wearing off. Feeling the degrees still playing in his body, Stephen decided to walk to the office. It was not far. He easily covered the distance of 1 block, but the day was heating up, and the hot August sun glared down on the young man. Stephen unbuttoned his shirt collar and walked over to the fountain. He realized that it would look rather strange. A successful businessman washing his face right in this urban facility. But right now he didn't care. Stephen walked over to one of the pounding water features and put his head under it, the illuminating currents doing their thing. He was immediately relieved and moved forward. In the public garden where the fountain was playing, not far away on a bench sat a girl. Passing by her, Stephen heard quiet sobs. Involuntarily, he turned around. The stranger was very thin and pale, not a gram of makeup. Thin fingers of hands nervously passing pens, textile bags full of tears, big blue eyes. Stephen sat down next to her. "So, what are we giving here?" With a sneer, he asked. The girl flinched. The young man expected her to rudely answer him to jump up from the bench and run away. However, she turned to him and often clapped her eyes. "You know, I am grateful to you for asking me what I am crying about. No one has asked me that for a long time. No one I know cares. They're all in a hurry. I think they're running away from their own and other people's problems. They don't want to empathize with their neighbors. It's like it's none of their business. It is easier to pass by than to get into the problem or help trustingly. The stranger shared with him. Someone will say that you should leave your worries at home. But I have almost no close people. There is no one to ease my soul. One grandmother. She won't say no, she'll listen. But there are things I can't tell her. I'm afraid of disturbing her. Stephen looked at the girl with surprise and was amazed that she was so hasty in opening her soul to a stranger. He noticed that the stranger was very modestly dressed and realized her income was very modest. He did not feel sorry for the girl, but the situation was curious. Therefore, Stephen did not interrupt her, but listened attentively. You know, I went around all the offices in search of a job, and everywhere rejected. No experience. And my grandmother's pension is not even enough for food. She's a sick person, even though she's keeping up. But she's a sick person. A lot of money is spent on medicines, and utilities have to be paid. But I can't help her at all. She raised me. She gave everything, lived for me. And I don't get a chance to thank her. I can't get a job. That's all. I have no strength left. I just sit and cry. She cried deeply again. Stephen looked at her more closely and thought that he had never made such an unusual acquaintance before. And what is your education? He asked philologically. I just went to school to get a job. There's a gymnasium across the square, and a teacher was needed. Stephen scratched the back of his head, and an absolutely wild idea occurred to him, and he voiced it. I need a secretary here. Oh, take me. I know the computer. The girl exclaimed hopefully. Well, you're in luck. I am the owner of a respectable brokerage firm, and I can help. I think you are literate in this regard. Yes, I have a red diploma. The girl rummaged through her bag and showed it to Stephen. He pretended to scrutinize it. Well, I'll hire you if you want to, and the girl's eyes flashed genuine interest. Really? Why? Am I really going to deceive inexperienced ladies? At these words, the stranger blushed thickly. I'm very grateful to you. You're just saving me. Her eyes are more important again. But don't feel bad, Wendy. She stared at Stephen in surprise. How do you know my name? From my diploma, actually. I showed it to her. Oh yes, the girl smiled trustingly. But I have one condition. The man continued. Oh, anything you want, the girl promised. And Stephen decided to make an experiment, to create a tempting situation for this young girl to see how she would react. He stood up and examined her from head to toe. And his type, of course. However, the girl's looks were pleasant, and the more he interacted with her, the more attractive he found her. Wendy had a lovely doll face with bottomless eyes, a dainty nose and pretty lips. She had stopped crying, and a delicate blush and charming round dimples appeared on her girlish cheeks. Stephen scratched the back of his head, then began to adjust the belt on his pants. Well, anyway, you're going to have to do me an intimate favor. Well, right there in the office on your first day of work. After these words, Wendy often blinked her eyes. Her eyebrows rose up in surprise. That's a must. But somehow I wanted to pay for everything in this life. How did you put it? You don't have the money, so we'll take someone else's. Wendy was completely confused and insulted, jumped up from the bench, but then pulled herself together and boldly looked Stephen in the face. Give me the address, please. I'll come to apply for a job. I'll be there. It won't cost me anything. We'll be able to provide for my grandmother and me. That's right, he said. Your salary will be good. Stephen gave the address of the office and said goodbye to the girl. He was sure she would change her mind, wouldn't come to work tomorrow. Some fleeting, joyful feeling, like sunlight slipping among the clouds, lighted up the man's heart. But it immediately disappeared into the depths of his dark thoughts. Looking at the man's receding figure, Wendy felt uneasy. How to go to him tomorrow? And why give herself to a stranger? She had no choice. The strength taken from years of hardship was running out. She and her grandmother needed a piece of bread. So Wendy had no qualms about the ordeal ahead of her. Of course, it was unpleasant. After all, she had never had a man before. But life had left her no choice. She couldn't sit on her grandmother's neck all the time. Wendy remembered her unhappy childhood. She'd once had a full family, a mother and father, and even a philosopher grandfather. A picture of him teaching her to read from a children's primer came to mind, on the porch of the village house. And then came this misfortune. Her parents had traveled with her to her grandmother's house, and there had been a gas leak. Only Vanessa and Wendy survived, thanks to the fact that they were sleeping in the far bedroom, window open. But despite this, they were also taken away from there by ambulance in serious condition. The doctors managed to pump the victims out, and then began a difficult litigation with the guardianship. Wendy wanted to take away from her grandmother because of her low income and advanced age. But the spirited woman fought to the end and won her granddaughter back. She realized that she could not give her a wide range of opportunities in life, but she could surround the little girl with warmth and love. And the woman did everything possible and even impossible to raise her granddaughter. Yeah, they didn't have much. Sometimes they even had to borrow food from a neighbor before the guardianship came. They both looked at them, drooling, but they couldn't touch them. And after the patronage of the social services, they took everything back. But they didn't want to part. Native people who loved each other, no one else could give them such happiness. And so, overcoming all adversity, they stayed together. Through ill health, Vanessa was engaged in lessons with her granddaughter. This made her a very good student. This allowed Wendy to enter on a budget. She remembered how she and her grandmother celebrated the occasion, with homemade wine from grapes that grew on their plot and fragrant strawberries from their own vegetable garden. It was small, but kept in perfect order. You bet, because they had been feeding from it for a whole year. They managed to grow potatoes, beets, onions, dried apples from the forest for the winter. However, they had enough cherry jam to stock up on. Is 2 women too much to ask? Of course, Wendy wanted to have beautiful clothes and in childhood toys. But from a very early age, she realized that there was something more important than things. She treasured that warm and affectionate relationship with her grandmother, and she thanked God that she wasn't taken from her somewhere. Wendy was used to labor and discipline from childhood. Her grandmother's upbringing helped her to keep the best human qualities in her and always be herself. The girl knew that she was very strong, but now her soul was broken. Not every young shoulders could withstand the hardships she went through. However, the girl did not cry anymore, wiped the tears from her eyes, and decided that she would definitely go tomorrow to the office at the named address and do everything this paper man asked her to do. And then she would work faithfully. Wendy went to her home. She was in a state of confusion. The joy of finding a job had been covered up by a lewd offer from her future boss. The rest of the day flew by. To forget a little and shake off the unpleasant feelings, Wendy did all the chores around the house, whatever she could get her hands on. By evening, she was tired. I decided to call Grandma for tea. Anticipating the pleasure, she cut in half a loaf and abundantly smeared it with apple jam. Although here she put the impressively sized sandwich in front of her grandmother. "Well, Grandma, do you want a hearty meal?" "Oh, that's what I mean. To live a life of pleasure," laughed Vanessa. "Yeah," agreed Wendy. "Now I'm going to shower, and I'll get in touch, and we'll go for a promenade before bed." The sun was sloping towards sunset when she and her grandmother went for a walk. They decided to walk all the way to the quarry. Not the nearest light, but pleasantly, reasoned Wendy. The rest of the day flew by. Wendy and Grandma loved these summer evenings. Easy for both of them. Walking along the forest road beneath tall pines, the quarry appeared in the distance, but already you could make out its dark Moldovan water. The crowns of the young spruce trees that had been planted near it a few years ago. Soon they approached it and started throwing small pebbles into the water from the shore. Imperceptibly, the lilac twilight thickened over them, and the travelers hurried home. They did not want to walk through the forest in the dark, but on the narrow forest road they met a very ancient old Bradshaw woman with a stick in her hand. "Would you say, sweetheart?" she asked. "There's a high voltage far out here." "We haven't heard of one," replied Wendy. As she got closer, the girl was able to make out the passersby. She was about 80 years old, no less. "Oh my God. I've been reading too much. I think I'm lost. Where does this road lead to?" "To the city." "Where do you want to go?" Vanessa asked. "Oh, then I'm going the wrong way." The old woman fussed, turning back. Wendy looked up at the sky. It was only a little over half an hour before it was completely dark. "Wait, where are you going?" "There's no high voltage that way either. This road goes all the way to the quarry and ends there." "Where did you come from?" "From a cottage farm, from the forest." "So I have a cottage there, and the live one is now in mine. So you're coming from there now, with the forest." Vanessa mentally estimated the trajectory loomed decent kilometers. She marveled at the antics, but you won't make it back in the light. The forest is big, and in some places heavily overbolten. Only this road is rented by hunters, but it breaks off near the forest. People have often been confused in this area. They've even found human remains of travelers who lost their way in the forest and couldn't find their way out. "Look, it'll be dark soon. You won't find your way back in the dark. It'll only get more confusing. Come with us, and in the morning you'll take the train to your place. It leaves around 800. The woman recovered a little, but then she agreed. On the way she said that she went to the forest from early morning and imperceptibly passing from mushrooms from berries deepened into the thicket for about 7 kilometers. And that's if you count in a straight line. One could only wonder at her vigor and physical endurance. At her age, "I'm from the city myself," my grandmother said. "My father used to live there, but we moved away a long time ago. I was a girl. My mother died early, right after giving birth. My father was 6 years old when he got married. Then he married a woman, and we went to live with her. She made an excellent stepmother. Not everyone can find such a mother. She was so nice. She's dead now, of course. God rest her soul. And my father's in the other world, and my husband has recently left. But I'm still living. 3 kids. God sent them. Good, caring ones. But they've gone to different cities." Such frankness of a random travel companion surprised Wendy, and she, herself, not understanding why, suddenly revealed to her companion all today's story that had happened to her in the park. Vanessa looked at her surprised, but did not utter a word of reproach. "I'll tell it all out loud." The girl breathed a sigh of relief and felt as if a huge stone had fallen off her soul, interfering with her life further, spilling everything to a stranger. And she listened, nodding and mumbling to herself. During the conversation, they did not notice how they approached the town. At home, they took the grandmother as their own, and in the daylight she did not seem so ancient. The women offered her shelter, a warm bed and hot tea with a loaf generously smeared with jam. The rays of light and the old woman's eyes were full of gratitude. After tea, she lay down and fell fast asleep. And on the morning before work, Wendy accompanied her to the electric train, comfortably settled in the carriage. Smiling grandmother in the open window waved goodbye to the girl, wrinkles in hand. "Thank you, honey, that you did not abandon on the road. It's no big deal. You don't go into the woods alone anymore, do you? It's scary. You might not get any help." "Thank you. I won't. I've had enough of walking." She smiled and suddenly added, "And you, daughter, don't think that nothing just happens in the world. Go get a job. And that guy, don't be afraid. You'll do as he asked. Unexpected happiness will come into your life. Take my word for it." The train rumbled and moved off. At a loss, Wendy followed it. She forever remembered the kind, old woman's face and her shrewd, tenacious gaze. With 3 novelties, Wendy went to the broker's office. And what was Stephen's surprise when he saw yesterday's acquaintance outside his office, and she'd arrived before the office opened. Charming what? He thought. What am I going to do with her in terms of intimacy? And why would I want her? It's silly. Well, a young girl like that will be a wonder to me. Oh, hello, young one. He turned to Wendy. Honestly, I thought you weren't coming. You would have shown up sooner, though. Well done. But let's see how you do after you've checked in with HR, shall we? Let's go. He took her under his arm and led her into the office. Stephen felt her stiffen up, all wooden. Yeah, relax, he said. I'm not touching. Let's get organized. And by lunchtime, you'll be in my office, she explained. The girl raised her trusting eyes to him and nodded silently. Stephen noticed this time what beautiful, delicately furniture-colored hair she had had when they first met. It had been gathered into a ponytail, and now it fell loosely over her shoulders. It caused him to feel pleasantly under a cloud of sexual fantasy. Stephen walked into his office and immersed himself in his work. In contrast to his frivolous attitude towards the female sex, he went about his work in a collected and businesslike manner. He only broke away from it when Wendy timidly poked her pretty head in the doorway. Frankly, he had already forgotten about the girl. "May I come in?" she asked. "Oh, in time," he laughed. "I really am. I really want to, since you came, and we have a contract. Let's do everything quickly and disperse. You're already registered in the personnel department." "Formalized," the girl answered fearfully. Stephen got up from his seat, walked to the door, and turned the key in the lock. "Well, hurry up and show me what you can do." Wendy began to slowly undress. "What's this?" Stephen's eyes rounded, and he stared in bewilderment at the knit pantaloons, small blue florals. "Lingerie," the girl answered bewilderedly. "From what grandmother's trunk did you get them?" The man just rolled with laughter. "No, my dear, they are not lingerie," he said, wiping tears from his eyes. "It's some kind of priority cling." He wrinkled his nose. "Look, go to work sometime. That's a very exotic outfit you're wearing." I wanted something. He couldn't help himself and laughed. "I feel like I've undressed my grandmother." "Go. I'm unilaterally terminating our contract. You're making me cry. Go ahead and don't take offense. But I'm really not mean." He often wanted to show off his sexual exploits to his buddies, but the pantaloon story suddenly became personal and untouchable. It was funny, but he didn't want to reveal it to any third party. Stephen caught himself smiling blissfully as he stared into space. "Good thing I have a separate office," he thought, and got to work. Wendy slipped out of his business suite and froze by the door. Complete confusion reigned in her soul. The girl didn't know what she should do. To be upset because she had caused Homeric laughter at the chief, or to rejoice that he had lost his desire for Polonsky like a tomato. She returned to her seat and tried to concentrate on her work. The next day, Stephen came through the reception area. He said hello to his regular secretary. Nancy was a beautiful lady with a mind-blowing figure, large breasts and round hips, hers colored in various light shades. Her hair was gathered on her head in such a ponytail. Her makeup was bright and professional. She sat by the computer simply, nodding her perfectly painted guesses at the keyboard. He glanced toward Wendy. She, too, was at her workstation. Meeting the chief's gaze, she all folded up and literally squirmed in her office chair. Stephen felt as if the fragile girl was about to disappear into space. "Hello," he said casually. "You could say congratulations on your first day of work. Yesterday was a baptism of fire." He smirked meaningfully, and the girl blushed. "I will." What questions he had for Nancy. She's in the business. "Nancy," he turned to the secretary. "You distributing the duties so that it's easier for her for now. What about you is more complicated. You understand, while she gets up to speed." Of course, Stephen performed everything to the best of his ability. "She's a girl. She's got a high typing speed. I checked it out. We have a lot of turnover. I'll just give it to her now, and I'll take care of the urgent stuff." "Nancy, what a clever girl you are," Stephen said with admiration. A satisfied smile stretched across the blonde's face, and Stephen entered his office and immediately forgot about both ladies. He was so absorbed in his work that he often didn't hear what was going on around him. When the man left the office in the evening, he found Wendy alone in the waiting room. "This is for you." Stephen pulled out of the bag several packages of expensive French underwear. "That these are normal underpants?" He grinned. The girl blushed thickly. "You what?" "I don't need anything." "Yes, you do. I saw it with my own eyes." "And what you have? Burn it. In fact, you know what? I'll give you a bonus. You go to closet, change your hair. You know, all that feminine stuff. And that's a must, of course. Otherwise, I'll fire you for sure." "Well convinced," she agreed. While Stephen went down to the exit of the building, on his face waited a mysterious smile. But it happened to buy underpants for the secretary, not for his mistress, not for his wife, but just from the street. He shrugged his shoulders, but noted to himself that he was in an elevated mood. A week later, Nancy literally burst in on him with a perplexed look. She turned to the chief. "Stephen, but what a good girl. Indeed, her help is invaluable. But I can't get her to dress differently. It's such junk that our partners are horrified when they look in the waiting room." Stephen took his head off the papers, and it hit him. The girl had absolutely no money, and he'd forgotten what he'd said about the bonus. "Nancy, I'll take care of this matter myself. Go to your office," he commanded. When the man left his office, it was already dark outside the window. It was the 11th hour of the night, and Wendy was still sitting at her desk in the same pose. "What are you doing here so late?" he wondered. "Yes, I wasted a lot of time while I was sorting it out, and the documentation needs to be done for tomorrow. So I stayed late," quietly whispered the girl. "And you diligently," grinned Stephen. "It's a pity only in the business sphere, in others not so much." He gave her a sly look. Wendy stood up from the table and mumbled embarrassedly. "Well, I've finished. Permission to go?" "I'm not." Stephen said with ostentatious distinction that it was getting late, and such valuable employees I prefer to drive personally. "So please, mademoiselle, gentlemen, welcome to my private car." He theatrically gave the girl his hand, and she trustingly accepted it. Together they went downstairs. He opened the car door for her, and she settled into the front seat. The engine roared to life, and the crossover sped off. Wendy gave a startled gasp. "Oh, come on, Stephen. We're in town, not on the highway. You're telling me off. Tell me, please, what's the right one? Just a few days in the office, and I'm on the short end of the stick with the brass." And he laughed. "But since you're so brave, I'm sure you'll take my remark adequately." "Oh, and how to her remarks?" The girl got worried. Of course. Speak up. I'll fix everything." "Well, it is not on the documents. Do not worry," he calmed the girl. "It's on your appearance. You see how stylish Nancy is. You, too, need to tidy up your closet to match your business status. But we've safely replaced some of the old stuff. At least I hope so." Stephen glanced meaningfully at Wendy, and she lowered her eyes. "Come on, you're embarrassed in front of the chief, with whom you were one step away from an intimate moment." Remembering the situation, the man was in a playful mood. "So I haven't gotten Stephen's first paycheck yet to buy the clothes I need," justified Wendy. "But I can't wait for you to get it. It's in the accounting department, and I can't give it to you sooner. Why don't you and I stop by the convenience store and pick out something for tomorrow anyway? Nancy's been buzzing around. It's a distraction from work." "But why would you want to spend so much money?" asked the girl. Wendy exhaled tiredly. "Stephen, but let's go in private. Call me Stephen. That's one. And two is let me decide for myself, unnecessary or not unnecessary. Not for me. Why don't you cut the crap and wear it normally? And then we'll decide about this money, all right?" Wendy nodded in agreement. Stephen led the girl to a boutique with very expensive clothes to her questioning and indignant look. He had already prepared the necessary arguments. "I run an expensive firm and my secretaries have to be dressed up. Accordingly, you may not blink your lovely eyes. I don't accept any objections." "Girl," he called the sales girl. Would you be kind enough to match my girl's strict office bow? He glanced contentedly at the remote Baroque lady, then took a seat on the plush sofa and began leisurely digging through his phone messages. When Wendy came out of the prime, paid again, and business attire, he gave a contented thumbs up and calmly said, "Well, that's what I wanted. Just perfect. Now you look appropriate to your status. Thank you." He turned to the girl serving them. Then he paid for his purchases and drove Wendy home. She got out of the car with a happy smile and thanked him for the purchases. "Well, let's go, it's getting late, and there's a lot of work tomorrow. I did it not only for you, but also for me. Good night." He drove off, flashing his headlights for her. After driving a few meters away, Stephen stopped the car and wondered inwardly. In him woke up such a mischievous boy who seemed to sleep for many years. The man realized that he liked these feelings very much, and they were directly related to Wendy. Communicating with her gave him great pleasure. And today, he could hardly hide his admiration when she came out of the premiere. Totally refreshed, he could not show his admiration for her, for he himself had not yet realized what a pleasant and joyous state of mind was entering his life. To Stephen, this feeling was absolutely new. The memory of greatness was still alive in his heart, but it was somewhat detached, and often that coldness gave them away from each other. Love for her had not warmed his heart, nor had it evoked such intoxicating warmth and joy as was now developing in the man's soul. These soft currents of magical feelings were rolling over his whole being. He wondered to himself where it came from in him and why it felt so good now. What was this miracle that had happened in his destiny? After all, Stephen could not even suppose that this young girl would catch his eye. The man even felt a slight pang of jealousy because he imagined what a dazzling impression Wendy would make tomorrow morning, and many men would throw interested glances at her. The next morning, he found Wendy alone in the waiting room. "You look marvelous, transformed. I can't tell a story, I can't describe it. Just a different woman, I must say. Beautiful." As he opened the door to his office, he stopped and made a gesture. A thumbs up. "And this one, don't even doubt in the slightest that your fabulously good pantaloons burned." He winked at her. "Burned," the girl smiled. He sat down at his desk and couldn't gather his thoughts. Wendy, the image of her and the girl had followed him like an obsession. Some kind of illumination had settled in his soul, boyish moods and resentments of the past. The sorrows and tragedies receded into the background. She was so bright, cheerful, and sincere that next to her did not want to play the role of macho. And most importantly, Stephen realized that with her he was real, without social husks, and such a man liked himself more. And that in general he liked to enjoy life and be happy. He suddenly wanted to embrace this thin and defenseless girl, tenderly kiss her on the cheek and shield her from all the misfortunes of this world. Her purity evoked in his soul. Her purity evoked in Stephen's soul an extraordinary delight and faith in the best. If fate had sent him such a tender and unsophisticated devoted girl, it meant that she had given him a chance to free himself from the shell and enjoy the strong moments of life. He was delighted with this new joyous and pure feeling. But I was afraid at the same time. He started acting like a boy. In the office he was stern and severe with Wendy, and in the evenings he'd stand guard outside her house and watch her from the window of his car. He laughed at himself for turning into a young bully. With his money and status in life, Stephen realized that he was acting like an idiot. Just a short time ago, he had been a risky chucklehead and teased Wendy every day. Now it seemed from the outside that he was avoiding her. But for now, he couldn't help his inner shyness. He was also kind of embarrassed to show his feelings in front of the secretary and the blonde. After all, she had unwittingly witnessed their relationship. In such a suspended state, Stephen stayed for about 2 months, until Nancy brought him out into the open. Stephen once turned to her when she was bringing important papers for him to sign. "You're breaking yourself all the time. Is your attitude towards the new girl on your face? Is it readable by your behavior?" The blonde smiled slyly, which is clearly visible to everyone. scared Stephen. Well, not all of it. I could see the spark between a man and a woman right away. It's already a flame between you two. The man between us is dumbfounded. You mean her? Stephen, you're such a tough cookie. And now you're just smeared. But get your act together and eventually ask her out on a real date. Without all the poking and prodding. You think the man scratched the tip of his nose. Of course, to an outsider, the situation is obvious. You like each other, and it's time for you to be together. Nancy's words made Stephen's heart warm. He thought that after his idiotic proposal in the park, Wendy was not serious about him, and certainly not considering him as a suitor. But the blonde was so encouraging to his boss that he decided to talk to Wendy alone that very evening. Look, I want to spend some time with you. Right off the bat, he started at the end of the day. Yeah, Stephen, I'm ready. And Wendy had to pack a notebook and a tape recorder in her bag. You don't get it. I want a personal relationship with you. Oh, I'm not your equal. Equal or not, thank God, it's up to me. Let's give it a shot of hope. Stephen turned to her. What would it take? I'm inexperienced. Embarrassed the girl. Come on. You don't know. Your task is simple: to be yourself. Stephen smiled. But also to go out with me. What do you say? I don't know what will come of it, but it will be a curious experiment. Let's assume that we have a tentative agreement. And what will be our first date? The girl asked. I'll think about it, Stephen promised. He understood perfectly well that the standard scheme of seduction in the case of Wendy will not work. One could, of course, force her to sleep with him by blackmail. But that seemed disgusting to him now. The man sincerely wanted to like the girl for real. Days passed in his thoughts, and he noted to himself that his activity was not as vigorous as usual. Stephen was distracted all the time by thoughts of the girl. At the end of the week, he peeked into the reception area, without his permission. Nancy, sneaking out early, but he was glad she'd shown wits and some sass. Now, he and Wendy could not be interrupted by anyone. Stephen walked over to the girl and stared at her for somewhat longer than usual. Wendy jumped up from her chair. Stephen, I'm not staying late today. I'm leaving. Just tidying up my desk. Yeah, I can see that. Good for you. You're getting the hang of it. Except I asked you to call me Stephen when we're alone. No, I'm gonna go by my first name in the office. What do you want to do? I was going to suggest something. Stephen's a little hesitant. I'd like you to accompany me on a walk. It's the weekend. We could spend it outdoors. I've been wanting to go to a walking park for a long time. They say it's very cool, all Russian-style go-getters. So I want to invite you to come with me. I'd love to, but I promised my grandmother I'd go with her. We haven't been anywhere in a long time. I wanted to buy theater tickets. I've been thinking about it. You know what? Why don't you invite her to come with us? I think a woman would be interested too. It's not a long ride in comfort. Oh, that would be convenient for you, Wendy. If they call me, it's convenient. I'll give you a day to think about it tonight, and I want you to call me tomorrow. I hope it's a favorable decision. Wendy called her grandmother with her, and Vanessa gladly agreed. Oh, this is so exciting, she told her granddaughter. After all, it's been a long time since I've been anywhere, much less traveled. Yes, it is curious to see your boss, Stephen, what he is like outside of professional communication. You know, Grandma, I can't understand him. Sometimes he's simple and kind, and sometimes he's weirdly avoidant. He pretends not to notice me at all. Well, trust me, in my experience. Wendy, are you deeply sympathetic to this gentleman? Come on, he's so rich, he has so many beauties at his disposal. Yes, my dear, affairs of the heart. They're not even capitalistic. Rich, not rich. Successful, not successful. That principle doesn't work here. You're young. Forgive me, granddaughter. And you don't have much wisdom. But I'll give you an example. He's the neighbor downstairs. You can't take your eyes off him. A handsome man. I saw women running after him before my eyes. They were ready to tie the shoelaces on his sneakers. A girl. A little redhead, still puny, but just classy. But he's talkative, and he loves her. Who doesn't look at the pretties? She's the only one he's ever wanted. So it's okay. They're good parents in their family. They cured 3 of them. It would seem that they're completely different people, and even after they cheat on each other, they stick together. I had a friend who was like that. Here's her story. When she was young, handsome Kim got tuberculosis. So one day he comes home with a voucher for recuperative treatment. And the next day a woman with charm, like a sin, meets the chief accountant with his work and starts thanking her for taking such care of her husband. Say, thank you for the allotted voucher. The woman's eyes in a pile, like a duck, a voucher. Never had one. Valka sprints home and goes into her husband's pocket, and there's a treacherous bag of anger next to the voucher. Say, I'm waiting for you, my dear, my beloved, in such and such a room with a NATO reception. Treatment of sexual recuperation. Gathering all his scorned honor in a fist, rushed mother-in-law in that sanatorium entered the room, waiting to separate from breakfast, and on the bed sees knitting, scarf, shawl under it. And there's a teddy bear from her mistress. Our Valia read outright. What love? What love? She sits, grieving, rubbing the umbrella in her hands. That's when the villain comes out. He meets his mistress, and he kicks his lawful wife in the legs. Forgive me, I'm not to blame. He came himself, woman ball, but proud stepped over the prostrate body, not forgetting a couple of times to kick the rival on the head of the husband unfaithful, kicked her out on arrival, and then took her mother's advice to take her back. Who would want such a trained lady? And with 2 kids. Kim never got tuberculosis again, and there are plenty of such examples, my dear. And there are successful women and beautiful as dolls from head to toe, well-groomed, and at work honor and a tight purse. But there is no female happiness. Lonely. And for a woman it's right. She will not rest until she realizes herself as a wife and mother. That's our nature, so don't look at his wealth, and don't get scared. Act natural. Maybe he is tired of these capricious and rich kings and pulled the man to something real. You're guileless, and you're straight and beautiful. I'm the one with the granddaughter. You don't even need makeup. Everything about you is tender, soft, and feminine. Oh, thank you, Grandma, for your kind words. I believe you. I guess it's all true. How many heart-to-heart talks have we had with you? You've never been wrong once. Always right. It's not just intuition, it's logic. I'll tell you the signs, and you apply them to the chief and you'll know his intentions. Many young ladies often wonder about the attitude of their chosen one, whether he is keen and loves sincerely and deeply. If such questions disturb your soul, you need to analyze the actions of your partner. There are several aspects of a man's behavior by which you can judge his feelings. He notices the merits and often talks about them. He is really sincerely attached to a woman if he evaluates her comprehensively, admires the appearance, character, abilities, achievements of his chosen one. He notices not only beautiful legs, but also a sharp mind, kind disposition, a subtle sense of humor, the ability to support in critical moments. Often admires a woman. He looks at a special, not oily, full of passion eyes, but warmly and with tenderness. Many men like to look at their favorites, furtively enjoying their beauty and grace from afar or while sleeping. But close eye contact does not strain them. They do not hide their gaze and do not look away. Sensitive to change. He always pays attention to a new hairstyle or outfit beloved. Subtly feels the changes in her mood and behavior. Generous on compliments and on praise. She positively evaluates the desire for development in the profession. Well, or culinary experiments in the home kitchen. He wants to be close. He lets the chosen one into his space, offers to meet on his territory, gladly shows his home, office, dacha, strives to spend with his beloved as much time as possible. He is comfortable in her society in a busy work schedule. A man like this will always find time. He will call or write a message. And if men prefer to meet in hotels or in the apartment, the partner comes up with a lot of excuses about communicating at home. Rarely calls and writes, so he is not in a hurry to let her into his life. He has to be patient. He's willing to wait for his lady. That goes for everything. Does the girl dress up for a date? Is she late for a meeting or pulling for intimacy? If a man is reverent about the chosen one, he does not rush her with important decisions. When a woman really hooked him, he will be patient and show patience, whether she is capriciously uncollected or not in the mood. Wants to be liked. He makes an effort to look good, pays maximum attention to his hair and clothes, chooses perfume carefully, wants to become closer in the spiritual sphere, so he is actively interested in the worldview, hobbies, friendship of the chosen one. When meeting, he shows gallantly, demonstrates his best qualities. He also values her opinion. If the partner plans a long-term relationship with his chosen one, he listens to her advice when choosing clothes and food. He discusses with his beloved creative projects and prospective plans, allows you to evaluate his actions, performances of movement. In a positive way, he perceives critical comments, and if he considers them fair, he avoids blunders in the future. He also shortens the distance. It is pleasant for him to be in the same space with his chosen one. Therefore, he will not build the boundaries of communication with her, and the desire to be closer is well traced at a random meeting. A loving man opens his arms wide. He smiles and begins to move towards her, not hiding his joy. But if he crosses his arms on his chest, scratches the back of his head, and his smile looks strained, the presence of a lady is not part of his plans. With his entire appearance, he will make it clear that meetings are better planned and limited in time. He demonstrates his achievements. He gladly shows his beloved all the merits of his life. A special disposition and trust are indicated by those cases when a man offers his lady to use his phone, tablet, put on his shirt, try on sunglasses, sit behind the wheel of his favorite car. He spares his beloved's feelings, twiddling his thumbs. He tries to avoid conflicts or situations that upset the chosen one, will not play on her weaknesses and pain points. The first to initiate reconciliation at a rift will stop a protracted dispute. He is sensitive to the tears of his beloved, so he will always embrace her, will calm her down. He will not allow strangers to hurt the feelings of his partner. You know he is ready to change his lifestyle. Here, if a man is interested in a woman, he will roll mountains for her. He will replay plans, take an extraordinary vacation. If necessary, he'll come in the middle of the night. And if there are no feelings, he will come up with 1,000 obstacles to deny her a date or help. The partner of the one has full information about the interests, hobbies, and tastes of the woman he loves. He knows what books she reads, what wine she drinks, what genres of movies she prefers, her favorite flowers and perfume. Without serious intentions, a man's interests are limited to the framework of sexual relations. He easily forgets about things that are meaningful to her. He is sincere and frank. A successful man wants to see in his chosen one not only a beloved, but also a friend. He will trust her with his innermost thoughts and dreams. He will willingly tell about childhood offenses, favorite hobbies, relationships with parents, friends, colleagues. He is honest with the chosen one. If the truth can hurt her, he would rather keep silent than deliberately lie. Includes in the plans for the future. In conversation, a man begins to operate often with the pronoun we. He no longer speaks of himself in the singular person. Now it sounds more often we will decide, we will see, we will think, we will come. So he subconsciously demonstrates readiness for a joint life with the chosen one. By the way, he is attentive in intimate relationships in intimacy. He tries not only to satisfy himself, but also to reveal the possibilities to his partner. First of all, to make it pleasant for her. After the end of intimacy, he does not withdraw at all, but maintains bodily contact. He is open to hugs and touches. He is ready to change for the sake of his beloved. And if a woman is dear to a man, he can give up the most bad habits and will control himself. In order to please her, he will share her hobbies. He will tolerate her friends and relatives. even if he does not like them. He shows care. Serious attitude to a woman is manifested by a desire to help her, that is, to be useful to her. The man is responsive to her requests and zealously takes up the solution of any, sometimes insignificant problem situations. Sacrifice personal time and professional interests. You know he doesn't tolerate competition. He wants to be the only one in his beloved's life. Becomes irritated at the sight of potential rivals. He can't stand comparisons with other men. He is satisfied if he manages to make a good impression on the chosen one and is the first to give her support. He likes it when a woman consults him when making important decisions. She values his point of view. Next, he takes care of the expenses. A man is not in a hurry to pay for a partner who does not interest him, but for his beloved, he will not spare anything. He is constantly invested in her beauty and health. Pays for the election in restaurant stores, provides her with a decent life. This is very important for him. Be a leader in the material sphere. Show willingness to take on any financial obligations of the beloved. He is not afraid of responsibility. He willingly tries on the role of the head of the family, is ready to make important decisions and implement them, voices a desire to marry, become a father, takes care of his loved ones, introduces his parents and relatives. When a man decides to take this step, a woman can be sure that his intentions are the most serious. She is the only contender for his heart. He will gladly get acquainted and with her relatives will try to make a pleasant impression on them. He is eager to take the relationship to the next level. A man interested in a short sexual encounter. He constantly comes up with some ridiculous excuses, preventing the reunion. And if his intentions are serious, he moves the relationship along. After meeting his parents, he offers to come over, and then he proposes. Vanessa finished and looked intently at her granddaughter. "How much is similar?" she remarked with surprise. "That's what I told you. So let's go, since we're invited. Besides, I can see you like him too. I don't understand him, but I can see he's got a good heart. All right. Well, let's see the boss outside the office." The young woman laughed wickedly. The trip was indeed a pleasant surprise for them. On the road, Stephen made a lot of jokes. He was alert. Wendy liked the fact that he did not ignore her grandmother's wishes. It seemed to her that the chief became sympathetic to Vanessa. So, in casual conversation, they reached the place. Before their eyes spread out a huge natural park with powerful paths, with majestic towers, castles, fortresses, and shuttles between them, corridors and carts. The charioteer gave a few hundred and got to any object with a breeze. And in the center of the cultural site, on a high mountain, stood the majestic figure of a new serpent, which at the appointed time spewed out streams of fire. The travelers visited all the art objects they liked, had lunch in a stylized Korchevnikov's, admired the final exit of the old Russian dragon, bathed in the local river. In general, they were satisfied. Happy and tired, they went on their way back. Stephen was jubilant. Wendy had spent the whole day with him. She smiled, took him under her arm, and discussed her impressions. Vanessa, too, had made a favorable impression on him. He expected to see a decrepit old woman, but met a vigorous, neat woman. He could talk to her on any subject. With these two ladies, he felt at home freely and easily. He didn't even have to control his emotions or restrain his impulses. He too acted like a child and enjoyed the fabulous outing. In the late afternoon, Stephen delivered Wendy and her grandmother home and went to his own place. He was light and happy at heart. The man was content and caught himself thinking that he felt good about being able to give such a trip to the girl his heart desired. After this trip, their relationship began to develop rapidly. There was warmth, respect, and care. Stephen was thrilled to realize that Wendy also cared for him. It gave him so much energy that he felt as if he were not walking, but simply floating above the ground. Time passed, and gradually they grew closer and closer. And soon one remarkable incident occurred which enabled Stephen to be convinced of the correctness of his choice. When the city was covered with snowy winter and cold winds, forgot in its streets. He caught a bad cold, with a high fever and skinny chills gripping his entire body. At the height of the infection, he called Nancy and told her he would be gone for several days. The man's condition kept worsening, and soon he slipped into oblivion alone in the apartment, completely helpless. Stephen perceived the sounds of the television and telephone as if through a jenna of thick fog. He was no longer able to even stick a thermometer under his arm. The patient was losing touch with reality. The only one who sounded the alarm was Wendy. She convinced Nancy to give her a spare key to Stephen's apartment. It was kept in the study just in case. She rushed over to her boss's house. The girl was shocked by what she saw. She immediately called an ambulance, and Stephen was hospitalized. Wendy arrived at his apartment just in time, because the timely treatment helped him to avoid complications. According to the doctor, they were sure to threaten a man weakened by infection. Every day, the girl visited the patient and made sure to bring fruit. And hello from Vanessa. Feeling her care and presence, Stephen recovered quickly. Soon he was discharged, although he spent another week at home. During this time, the man got so used to the closeness of his favorite girl that he did not want to part with her even for a while. He came to the realization that he would like to see Wendy as his wife. He needed her like air. On his return to the office, Stephen set to work with renewed vigor. He decided to propose to Wendy. The night before, the man left his office and approached her workplace. "Wendy, I need to discuss some work issues with you, but not in the office, but tonight at the Orpheus restaurant. I'd like you to be ready at 9 o'clock. I'll pick you up. Dress code. Parade objections will not be accepted." That's not a request. That's an instruction. Wendy was surprised at the way he spoke to her, but did not object. "It will be carried out to the best of my ability." "Not to worry," she replied theatrically, continuing to type on the keyboard. When they arrived at the restaurant, a table had already been set for them. Wendy had been with Stephen in various places before and was therefore surprised by the unusual service. In the middle, she saw a beautiful vase with a voluminous flower arrangement. "You said it was a business occasion. Why flowers?" The girl was surprised. "And this you will find out later." "Mademoiselle," he slyly smiled. Then the wonderful voice of Paul McCartney was heard in one of the speakers. Stephen stretched out his hand to meet her and offered to dance. They twirled around the floor. Stephen gently embraced her and could not believe it was real. Sunny and warm vibes emanated from her. Wonderful hair spread across her shoulders. Her blue eyes glowed with happiness, and her body gave out desires. The song ended. He gallantly led her to a table. Wendy sat down. "You know," Stephen began, "I'm frankly admiring you right now. I don't think there's a more beautiful woman in the world. I'll tell you the truth. You're probably the only woman I have any genuine respect for. You know everything about me. I'm no saint. Sometimes I've been ridiculous and stupid. Yes, I remember your indecent proposal." Wendy laughed. "And I remember what you were wearing at the hour of our first intimate date." Stephen smiled broadly. "But I'm grateful to your outfit for drawing my attention to you. But the time has come when you are not shy of me at all, and I want you to be my wife." He opened his palm with a dainty ring hidden in it. "Well, I'm a saint. All that remains is to ask Vanessa's blessing." Wendy raised her matchless cornflower eyes to him, and he saw in them so much love and tenderness that his heart leaped with happiness. "Can you imagine? I agree. Because from the very beginning I couldn't refuse any of your offers, even from indecent." The girl squinted slyly. "That's the effect you have on me. You could say, hypnotically. I am ready to sacrifice all my principles and morals. Vanessa has long ago figured you out. 6 months ago, and you charmed her from the first moment you met her. So I take it that's a complete agreement." "That's right. You, Stephen, understand. Give me your ring." Stephen complied with his beloved's request, and on this occasion they drank 2 bottles of champagne, then had a delicious dinner and several times twirled in a slow dance. Stephen remembered how unsophisticated Wendy used to be, and he desired her more than anything else in the world. Very delicately and carefully, he was teaching her to open herself up to passion. But it wasn't even about intimacy. Although their physical union was getting better and better each time, Stephen felt in Wendy an absolute kinsman. This beautiful girl had found a place for him in her soul. She was truly his other half. Stephen felt responsible for a woman for the first time and did not avoid her. He was ready to fight back hard for encroaching on his girlfriend's insecurities. No one in his presence would offend Wendy by word or deed. She was completely under his protection, and it was from her that the man felt a mental and physical togetherness that could only be dreamed of. How had this girl managed to win him over? He did not understand. What fascinated him was Wendy's sincerity and selflessness. She really gave Stephen the kind of attention and care that he had dreamed of as a child and received only from his father. Only now in this affair with Wendy, he realized that Prochor had managed to plant in him his best life principles. So he valued simple human values, mutual love, respect, sincere care for each other. A difficult childhood and frivolous youth pushed all this into the background and replaced it with phantom attachments. But neither success nor money could make Stephen happy. Only his relationship with Wendy had brought harmony and peace to his soul. Only now he realized what a pleasure it is to live in balance with himself, when not passions tear your soul, but tenderness and delight. They fill it all around. Nature, people, and everyday affairs become completely different. The very perception of the world changes. Stephen looked at her now with gratitude. Yes, it is not an easy world, and it is not simple, but it is what it is. When the fire of true love burns inside you, then philosophically perceive the difficulties and vicissitudes of life. Indulge in other people's shortcomings goes irritability, nervousness, using sometimes envy of other people's happiness. Stephen now realized how much good lurked in his soul, and there was no one to give it to. In fact, no one was taking it. And Wendy really needed his care, attention, and adoration. Her adoring gaze reflected her love for him. She must have sensed something real that had always been hidden in him. The girl trusted Stephen so infinitely that to deceive her, he could not deceive her. He realized clearly that Wendy was the cornerstone through which he had come to love life itself in all its incarnations. With her, he had discovered one immutable truth. He was giving himself to her and deriving great pleasure from it. Next to her, he became the real, the very sincere and desperate boy in whom his father had infinitely believed. The morning they met together in the large and bright bedroom, Stephen opened himself even more to Wendy. Putting his arms around her, he said, "You do not even realize how amazing you are, outwardly seemingly weak and fragile, but at heart strong and kind. You're the one who made me a better person. And that's not just a buzzword. It's the truth. I not only fell in love with a beautiful woman, but through you I became real. I got my self-respect back. Gone are the resentments, the fears. Through you, I've come to love the world. I have no complaints about it. It's given me such happiness. You have no idea how good it feels to be with you. I can't explain it to you, but I can show you." And he brought it to her lips in a passionate kiss. After a while, their private life became such that Stephen was breathtaking. For this, he was grateful to Wendy. She enjoyed learning all the intricacies of a close relationship between a man and a woman. Stephen sometimes became wildly frightened that he could pass it by. That and sobbing on the bench girls. He thanked God and fate that by some instinct he had seen the gorgeous woman hidden in this humble poor girl. Wendy had turned out to be a splendid wife. She was not afraid to quit her job and become a housewife, organizing everyday life and recreation for her beloved. Brought her great pleasure. The woman did not regret this step because one by one they had children, a healthy, strong boy, Rick with the same marvelous eyes, just like their mother's, and then a searing brunette with clear brown eyes, just like Daddy. They say girls who look like their fathers grow up happy, and vice versa. Boys who are lucky enough to inherit their mother's looks also become lucky. Stephen felt perfectly at home as a husband and father. He felt at ease, actively realized in the professional sphere, and was the main provider in the family. Even in his strict schedule, he was sure to allocate time to communicate with children when they grew up. On an equal footing with his wife, he attended parent-teacher conferences, participated in school life, took them to sections and additional classes. Vanessa lived to see his great-grandchildren and had time to nurse them. This kind woman passed away at the age of 90. Her soul departed peacefully to the kingdom of heaven in her sleep. During her lifetime, she refused to move in with the young and remained in her old home. Stephen did his best to make it more comfortable and sympathetic. He showed her respect to the end of the woman's life and considered her a kindred spirit. Thanks to his personal happiness, he was able to let go of his resentments toward his mother and remember the isolated moments of happiness she was able to give him. Celebrating the anniversary of their acquaintance, the Faber family recalled the incident of the indecent proposal and all the consequences that followed. A grateful heart now beat in Stephen's chest. He had grown to love the rain. One day, he came out of the office and realized that a downpour was about to break out. The scent was hard to describe. It smelled, especially of variety in foreign lands, and intensified with every minute. A lightning bolt flashed, like a flaming branch in a fire. It was followed by thunder. Droplets swiftly approached the ground and bombarded leaves, flowers, and grasses. Music was playing in my head. Stephen looked at the rain and saw a miracle. He admired how the raindrops gently touched the delicate greenery and tenderly, but washed away the flowers and hid in the thick grass. A heavy rain filled the street. It was in moderation, moving in rhythm and ringing. The August rain is young, and he cannot understand the wisdom of autumn. Men invite his youth and realized that he himself had entered the season of wise maturity. Stephen felt like raising his arms towards him and shouting to be heard. I'm a happy man. I feel crazy good. I love and am loved. Suddenly, the sky brightened, and the sun appeared from behind the clouds. Stephen, satisfied with the games of nature, and himself looked around and was pleased with the result. It seemed to him that the trees were younger and the flowers smelled sweeter. He looked up. The clouds were flying away, slowly turning into intricate shapes, and a bright star named the sun lit up. And we will wait for the pure world.